The security camera footage showed everything. A woman in faded jeans walking through the executive corridor where she had absolutely no business being. Adrian Hayes stood frozen in the boardroom, watching the live feed on his phone, his blood turning to ice. That was Clara, his daughter's babysitter. The woman who'd somehow made his dead mansion feel alive again. The woman No, he couldn't think about that now, because Clara Bennett wasn't who she claimed to be. And the worst part? He'd let her into his home, into his life, into his daughter's hearts. Before we dive into the story, if you're watching from anywhere in the world, drop your city in the comments below. I want to see how far this story travels. And if you end up hooked, and trust me, you will be, smash that like button and stick around until the end. Because what starts as a simple babysitting job becomes something none of them saw coming. Adrian Hayes had learned early that trust was a luxury billionaires couldn't afford. At 32, he'd already buried a wife, fired 17 nannies, and built an industrial empire that made grown men nervous in boardrooms. His days blurred together in a rhythm of conference calls, contract negotiations, and the particular silence that filled a house too big for the people living in it. The mansion sat on 40 acres outside the city, all glass and steel and carefully maintained grounds that nobody actually enjoyed. Adrian had bought it when Emma was still alive, back when they'd talked about filling those empty bedrooms with noise and chaos, and all the messy, beautiful things that made a house feel like home. That was before the accident. Before the funeral where 7-year-old twins stood holding hands, too shocked to cry. Before Adrian discovered that grief was something you couldn't fix with money, or power, or working yourself half to death. Now the house just echoed. "Mr. Hayes?" His assistant's voice crackled through the intercom. "Mrs. Morrison is here for the interview." Adrian didn't look up from the contract spread across his desk. "Send her in." The 18th nanny candidate walked into his home office wearing a suit that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent. Her resume listed degrees from prestigious universities, references from wealthy families across 3 continents, and a skill set that read like she was applying to run a small country rather than watch 2 7-year-olds. "Mr. Hayes, it's an honor." She extended a perfectly manicured hand. "I've reviewed the position requirements, and I believe my experience with high net worth families makes me uniquely qualified." "Do you like children?" Adrian interrupted. She blinked. "I'm sorry?" "Children. Do you actually like them, or is this just another job?" Of course I do. My references clearly demonstrate..." "Your references demonstrate that you're good at managing schedules and maintaining boundaries." Adrian closed the folder without reading it. "My daughters don't need a manager. They need someone who gives a damn." Mrs. Morrison's professional smile tightened. "With all due respect, Mr. Hayes, emotional attachment can compromise professional judgment. In my experience..." "Your experience doesn't include watching your children stop laughing." Adrian stood, signaling the interview was over. "Thank you for coming. My assistant will see you out." When the door closed behind her, Adrian walked to the window overlooking the back garden. Somewhere out there, Ava and Ellie were probably sitting in their playhouse, quiet and well-behaved and completely unreachable. The current nanny, Mrs. Chen, efficient and cold, didn't believe in excessive play. She ran the household like a military operation, and the girls had learned to be invisible. His phone buzzed. His father, naturally. The old man had opinions about everything, especially about how Adrian was raising his granddaughters. "I'm handling it," Adrian said instead of hello. Mrs. Morrison just left looking like someone shot her dog. His father's voice carried that particular tone that meant a lecture was coming. "That's the 3rd one this month you've rejected. She was wrong for them." "They're all wrong for them, according to you. Adrian, the girls need stability. They need someone who'll stay. They need someone who'll actually see them as children instead of responsibilities." Adrian loosened his tie, suddenly exhausted. Emma would have hated all of them. Silence on the other end. His father never quite knew what to say when Emma came up. "Have you considered," the old man finally said, quieter now, "that maybe you're not looking in the right places?" "Meaning?" "Meaning you keep hiring people who treat childcare like corporate management. Maybe try finding someone who actually needs the job, someone real." Adrian wanted to argue, but he was too tired. "I'll think about it." After hanging up, he stood at that window for another 20 minutes, watching his daughters through the glass. They'd built some elaborate game with dolls, moving them around the playhouse floor in patterns only they understood. Ava's hair, so much like Emma's, kept falling in her face. Ellie was talking, probably narrating the whole story the way she always did. They looked fine, healthy, safe. They also looked like they were just going through motions. The coffee shop wasn't anywhere Adrian normally went. It sat wedged between a dry cleaner and a used bookstore in a neighborhood where people actually walked places instead of driving. He'd only stopped because his usual place was closed, and he desperately needed caffeine before another soul-crushing board meeting. The interior smelled like burned coffee and old wood, mismatched furniture, local art on the walls, a bulletin board covered in flyers for yoga classes and lost cats, and someone selling a barely functioning Honda. Adrian ordered a black coffee and was about to leave when something caught his eye. A handwritten ad, pinned crookedly among the mess of papers. Babysitter available. Patient, creative, references available. Flexible schedule. I really need the work. Clara, 5550147. The handwriting was careful, slightly cramped, like someone who didn't have much paper to practice on. Below the text, someone had drawn a tiny flower in blue ink. Adrian pulled out his phone, stared at the number, then put the phone away. This was insane. His father employed full background check teams before hiring anyone who came near company property. Adrian had security protocols for the security protocols, and he was considering calling a random woman who advertised in a coffee shop. He took a photo of the ad anyway. 3 days later, after another nanny interview went nowhere, he called. The phone rang 4 times before someone picked up. Hello? The voice was cautious, a little breathless like she'd run to catch the phone. Is this Clara? Yes? Who's calling? My name is Adrian Hayes. I saw your babysitting ad and I'm looking for someone to help with my daughters. A pause. Oh, yes, of course. When would you want to meet? No resume demands. No questions about compensation packages or benefits. Just simple availability. Adrian found himself relaxing slightly. Would tomorrow afternoon work? Say 2 o'clock? I'll be there. Just text me the address. It's a bit outside the city. Do you have transportation? I'll figure it out. That voice again, warm despite the obvious worry. I really appreciate the opportunity, Mr. Hayes. After hanging up, Adrian sat in his office and wondered what the hell he was doing. His head of security was going to have an aneurysm. Clara Bennett arrived exactly on time, which Adrian noted was unusual. Most people either showed up early to kiss ass or late to prove they weren't desperate. She climbed out of a bus at the end of his long driveway and walked the quarter-mile to the house carrying a canvas bag that looked like it had seen better days. No car, no Uber, public transportation to a mansion. So, Adrian watched from his office window as she stopped halfway up the drive, staring at the house with an expression he couldn't quite read. Not impressed, exactly, more like uncertain whether she belonged there. She wore jeans that had been washed so many times they'd faded unevenly, canvas sneakers with worn soles, and a cardigan that didn't quite match. Her dark hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail. No jewelry except for small earrings that caught the light when she moved. Everything about her screamed ordinary. Adrian opened the door before she could knock. Mr. Hayes? She had brown eyes that met his directly, no practiced deference. I'm Clara Bennett. Come in. He stepped back, watching her reaction to the foyer. Most people gasped, made comments about the chandelier or the marble floors or the ridiculous amount of space. Clara just looked around with that same quiet uncertainty, like she was trying to figure out the rules of somewhere she'd never been. Your home is beautiful, she finally said. It's a house. Adrian closed the door. My daughters are in the living room. Why don't we start there? He led her through hallways that Emma had wanted to fill with family photos they'd never gotten around to taking. Clara walked beside him without chattering, which he appreciated. Most candidates filled silence with nervous talking, or worse, compliments designed to flatter. The living room was obscenely large. Emma's decorator had called it open-concept luxury living space, but the twins had claimed one corner near the windows. They'd built a fort out of couch cushions and were inside it now, whispering to each other the way they did when adults were near. Ava? Ellie? Adrian kept his voice gentle. I want you to meet someone. 2 identical faces peered out from the fort. Ava had paint on her cheek from art class earlier. Ellie's shirt was on backwards because she'd dressed herself and nobody had corrected her. Clara didn't wait for formal introductions. She walked straight to the fort and crouched down to eye level. "Hi," she said simply. "I'm Clara. That's a really excellent fort you've built there." Ellie, always the bolder one, studied her seriously. "It has 3 rooms and a tower." "3 rooms? That's impressive." Clara tilted her head. "What's the tower for?" "Looking for enemies." Ava's voice was quieter than her sister's. "Pirates, mostly." "Pirates are definitely something to watch out for." Clara nodded gravely. "Do you need any help with defenses? I'm pretty good at building walls." The twins exchanged one of their silent twin conversations. Then Ellie reached out and pulled back the blanket entrance. "You can come in, but Dad's too big." Clara glanced back at Adrian with a small smile that did something weird to his chest. Then she crawled into the blanket fort with his daughters like it was the most natural thing in the world. Adrian stood there in his $1,000 suit, suddenly useless. Inside the fort, he could hear Clara asking questions. What the pirates wanted. Whether the tower needed flags. If the fort had a kitchen, because all good fortresses needed snacks. The twins, who'd barely spoken to the last 3 nannies, were explaining their entire imaginary world. "Mr. Hayes," Clara's voice came from inside the cushions. "Do you have any paper and crayons? We need to draw a map of the surrounding territory." Adrian found himself actually laughing, a sound so unfamiliar in this house that it startled him. "I'll find some." By the time he returned with art supplies, Clara had the twins completely engaged. She was on her stomach, propped on her elbows, while Ava explained the complex rules of fort defense, and Ellie demonstrated her crayon technique. Adrian sat down against the couch and just watched. Clara wasn't performing. She wasn't using that high-pitched voice adults used when they talked down to children. She was just present. Listening like what 7-year-olds said actually mattered. "The pirates have a captain named Blackbeard," Ellie was explaining, scribbling furiously. "Classic name," Clara agreed. "Very intimidating." "He has a daughter, though," Ava added quietly. "And she's actually nice. She doesn't want to be a pirate." "Ah," Clara's voice softened. "So maybe not all pirates are bad?" "Some of them are just sad," Ava said, and Adrian's throat went tight. They were talking about themselves, about losing their mother, about being stuck in a world that didn't make sense anymore. And this stranger in her faded jeans had somehow created a space where they felt safe enough to say it out loud. An hour passed, then another. Clara helped them draw an elaborate map, complete with sea monsters and hidden treasure. She made up voices for different pirates. She asked questions that made the twins think harder about their story, building on it instead of just agreeing with everything. When Mrs. Chen appeared to announce dinner, the girls actually groaned. "Do we have to?" Ellie looked at Clara. "Can you stay for dinner?" Adrian stood, brushing off his pants. "Clara probably has other plans." "I don't, actually." Clara was already cleaning up crayons, helping the twins organize their drawings. "But that's up to your dad." 3 pairs of eyes turned to him. His daughters, looking more alive than they had in months. And this woman he'd just met. Not pushing, but not backing down either. "You're welcome to stay," he heard himself say. Mrs. Chen's expression suggested she had opinions about strange women joining family dinner, but she was too professional to voice them. "I'll set another place." Dinner was usually a quiet affair. The twins picked at their food while Mrs. Chen served courses with military precision. Adrian answered emails on his phone and pretended not to notice how much his daughters had retreated into themselves. Tonight was different. Clara sat across from him, completely unbothered by the formal dining room, or the fact that she was eating off china that cost more than her monthly rent. She asked the twins about their day, actually listened to the answers, made jokes that got them giggling. And then Mason said frogs were gross, Ava was explaining, more animated than Adrian had seen her in weeks. "But they're not gross, they're interesting." "Frogs are absolutely interesting," Clara agreed. "Did you know some frogs can freeze solid in winter and then thaw out in spring?" Ellie's eyes went wide. "Like ice cubes?" "Basically, their bodies make a special kind of antifreeze." "That's so cool." Ellie turned to her father. "Dad, can we get a frog?" Adrian, who'd been watching this whole exchange with something dangerously close to hope, managed a smile. "We'll talk about it." After dinner, Clara helped clear the table despite Mrs. Chen's protests. The twins followed her to the kitchen like ducklings, chattering about frogs and pirates and whether you could have a pet sea monster if you had a big enough pool. Adrian stood in the doorway and watched Clara wash dishes alongside his daughters, teaching them about soap bubbles and surface tension while they giggled and splashed water everywhere. This woman had been in his house for 4 hours. 4 hours, and his daughters were laughing again. When it was time for bed, the twins begged Clara to read them a story. Adrian expected her to defer to him, but she just looked over with a question in her eyes. "Please?" Ava added. "Just one story?" They ended up in the girls' bedroom, a space Emma had decorated in soft purples and yellows that now felt like a museum to someone gone. The twins climbed into their respective beds while Clara settled between them on the floor. "What kind of story do you want?" she asked. "One you make up," Ellie decided, "about the pirate's daughter." So Clara told them a story about a girl who was born on a pirate ship but dreamed of gardens and libraries and places where the ground didn't move, about how she was brave enough to want something different than what everyone expected, about how sometimes the biggest adventure was figuring out who you really were. Adrian leaned against the doorframe and listened to his daughters hanging on every word. When the story ended and Clara started to stand, Ava reached out and grabbed her hand. "Will you come back?" His quiet daughter's voice was almost a whisper. Clara glanced at Adrian. He nodded. "I'd really like that," Clara said softly. After the girls were asleep, Adrian walked Clara downstairs. At the door, he realized he hadn't even discussed the actual job. "I should probably ask about your experience," he said. "References, background." Clara's smile flickered. "I've worked with children before. I can give you names if you need them." "I do." He had to at least pretend to be responsible. "But honestly, I've interviewed 17 nannies with perfect credentials. None of them made my daughters smile." "They're wonderful girls," Clara adjusted her canvas bag. "They're just sad, missing their mom." Most people avoided mentioning Emma, like grief was contagious. Clara said it plainly, acknowledging the obvious. "When can you start?" Adrian asked. "Tomorrow?" Clara's face lit up. "I mean, if that works for you." "Tomorrow. We'll discuss schedule and payment then." He watched her walk back down the long driveway in the gathering dark, pulling out her phone to check the bus schedule. A woman who'd traveled 2 hours by public transportation for a babysitting job, who'd spent the entire evening playing with children without once asking about salary. Adrian's head of security was definitely going to have that aneurysm. But for the first time since Emma died, the house felt a little less empty. Clara arrived the next day with that same worn canvas bag, this time filled with art supplies, and a book about ocean creatures. The twins practically tackled her at the door. Over the following weeks, she became part of their routine. She showed up every afternoon when they got home from school. She helped with homework but made it fun, turning math problems into games and spelling practice into stories. She cooked simple meals with them. Nothing fancy, but the kitchen filled with laughter and flower clouds, and the twins wearing more ingredients than made it into the actual food. Mrs. Chen remained professionally disapproving, but couldn't argue with results. The girls were eating better, sleeping better, fighting less. Adrian found himself coming home earlier, making excuses about conference calls he could take from the house. He'd walk into rooms where Clara had the twins building elaborate structures out of cardboard boxes, or putting on plays with costumes made from old sheets. The mansion was getting messy. There were crayons on tables and books left open, and craft projects in various stages of completion scattered across surfaces that had previously been pristine. Adrian had never loved his house more. "Mr. Hayes?" Clara found him in his office one evening, the twins already in bed. "Do you have a minute?" "Adrian," he corrected. "And yes, what's wrong?" "Nothing's wrong." He hesitated in the doorway. "I just wanted to thank you. This job, it means more to me than you probably realize. You're good with them, better than good. They make it easy." Clara smiled, but something sad flickered behind it. "They're special girls. I hope they know that. I think they're starting to remember." Adrian set down the contract he'd been reviewing. "You want to tell me why you really needed this job?" Clara's expression shuddered slightly. "Does it matter?" "No, but I get the feeling you're undercharging me by about half." "You're paying me fairly." "I'm paying you what you asked for. which is nowhere near market rate for someone who's basically running my household. I'm not running your household. I'm hanging out with your kids. Clara shifted her bag. And honestly, I'd do it for free if I didn't need to eat. Why? The question hung between them. Clara looked at him for a long moment, and Adrian saw exhaustion there, the kind that came from carrying things alone for too long. Because they remind me that good things still exist, she finally said quietly. And I needed reminding. Before Adrian could respond, she was gone, slipping out with a quiet goodnight that left him staring at the empty doorway. He pulled up her basic background check, the one his security team had run despite his protests. Clara Marie Bennett, 30 years old, no criminal record, current address in a cheap apartment complex across town, previous employment scattered and sparse, retail, waitressing, administrative temp work. No red flags, but also no real history, like she'd appeared fully formed a few years ago with no past behind her. Adrian told himself it didn't matter. She was good with his daughters. That was enough. But he kept thinking about that sadness in her eyes. A month in, Clara suggested a garden. The backyard is huge and you're barely using it, she said over breakfast. She'd started joining them for meals without anyone quite deciding it should happen. The girls could plant vegetables, learn about growing things. Ellie bounced in her seat. Can we, Dad? Please? We don't have any gardening equipment, Adrian pointed out. I can get some. Clara was already making notes. Basic tools, seeds, maybe some starter plants, nothing fancy. I'll have my landscapers set it up. No. Claire's voice was gentle but firm. That's not the point. The point is the girls doing it themselves, getting dirt under their fingernails, learning that growth takes time and work. Adrian looked at his daughter's hopeful faces and surrendered. Fine, but I'm buying the supplies. Deal. The following Saturday, Clara showed up with worn gardening gloves and knowledge she'd clearly learned through experience, not books. She taught the twins how to turn soil, how to plant seeds at the right depth, how to water without drowning fragile roots. Adrian watched from the patio, supposedly working on his laptop, but actually just observing Clara kneeling in the dirt in old jeans, patiently explaining photosynthesis to 7-year-olds while they planted tomatoes. She fit here, in this space, with his children. The realization should have scared him. Instead, it felt like something settling into place. You should join us, Clara called over, shading her eyes against the sun. These plants are going to be your responsibility too. I don't garden. You do now. Come on, Mr. Billionaire. Time to get your hands dirty. Ava and Ellie giggled at their father being teased. Adrian found himself setting aside the laptop and walking over to the garden plot. Clara handed him gloves and a trowel with a grin that made him forget, just for a moment, about board meetings and stock prices and the weight of running an empire. For one Saturday afternoon, he was just a man planting vegetables with his daughters and a woman who somehow made everything feel lighter. The shift happened gradually, then all at once. Adrian started noticing small things. The way Clara laughed, full and genuine, when the twins told terrible jokes. How she always seemed to know when he'd had a particularly brutal day and would make his coffee just right without being asked. The careful way she avoided talking about herself whenever conversations turned personal. He noticed that she never arrived in anything but the same rotation of worn clothes, that she brought lunch from home in old containers, that she checked her phone constantly like she was worried about something. He also noticed, with growing awareness, that she was beautiful, not in the polished way of women at charity galas or the calculated way of people who knew how to use appearance as a weapon. Clara was beautiful in the way of things that didn't try too hard, sunset through trees, old books, laughter that came without thinking about it first. And she was completely off limits. She worked for him. She was vulnerable, financially dependent on this job. The power imbalance alone made any attraction inappropriate. Adrian reminded himself of this every time he caught himself watching her play with his daughters, every time she smiled at him over breakfast, every time she challenged him on something and he realized how much he valued her opinion. He was not going to cross that line. Then came the night everything got complicated. Adrian was working late in his office when he heard crying. Not the twins, they were asleep. This was coming from downstairs. He found Clara in this kitchen, sitting at the island with her phone in front of her and tears streaming down her face. She looked up when he entered and tried to wipe her eyes quickly. I'm sorry, I thought everyone was asleep. What's wrong? Adrian sat down across from her. Nothing, it's fine. Clara, she let out a shaky breath. My landlord called. He's selling the building. I have 30 days to find a new place. Okay, that's manageable, right? Clara laughed, but it sounded broken. Have you tried finding an affordable apartment in this city lately? Everything I can afford is hours away or in neighborhoods that aren't safe. And if I move too far, I can't work here anymore because the bus routes don't connect. Adrian's mind immediately went to solutions. I could help. No. Clara stood up quickly. No, you're already paying me fairly. I'm not going to take charity. It wouldn't be charity. You work for me. I need you here. You need a babysitter. You could find someone else. I don't want someone else. The words came out harder than Adrian intended. My daughters don't want someone else. Clara wrapped her arms around herself. I'll figure it out. I always do. How? Adrian stood too, frustrated by her stubborn independence. By working yourself to exhaustion? By taking a second job? By moving somewhere unsafe just to make rent? If I have to, yes. Clara's voice cracked. Because that's what people like me do, Adrian. We don't have safety nets. We don't have family money to fall back on. We figure it out or we drown. The silence that followed was heavy with things neither of them was saying. I have 12 guest rooms, Adrian finally said quietly. You could stay here. Clara stared at him. What? Just temporarily, until you find something better. You're here most days anyway, and the girls would love... I can't live in your house. Why not? Because... Clara gestured helplessly. Because it's insane, because I work for you, because people would think... I don't care what people think. Well, I do. Clara's eyes were bright with tears and something fiercer. I care that I've already crossed too many boundaries. I care that your daughters have gotten attached to me, and I don't know what happens when I eventually can't afford to keep this job. I care that I'm standing in a kitchen that costs more than I'll make in 5 years, and I feel like I'm pretending to be someone I'm not. Adrian moved closer, and Clara stepped back until she hit the counter. Who do you think you're pretending to be? He asked. Someone who belongs here. Someone who fits in your world. You think I fit in my own world? Adrian laughed bitterly. I'm a 32-year-old widower who can barely talk to his own children. I have more money than I'll ever spend, and none of it makes me happy. Until you walked into this house, I was drowning just as much as you are. Clara looked up at him, and Adrian realized they were standing very close. Close enough to see the gold flecks in her brown eyes. Close enough to notice she smelled like vanilla and the garden dirt they'd planted together. This is a bad idea, Clara whispered. The guest room? Everything. All of this. I should maintain professional distance. You teach my daughters about frogs and tell them pirate stories and make them laugh again. Professional distance left weeks ago. Adrian, I'm not asking for anything except letting me help you. Please. Clara closed her eyes. Adrian watched her wrestle with pride and practicality, independence and exhaustion. 1 month, she finally said, just until I find something, and I'm paying rent. Clarisma? Rent or I don't stay. I'm not a charity case. Adrian wanted to argue that she could never be a charity case, that having her here would be helping him more than her, but he recognized the steel in her voice. Fine, rent. Clara nodded, still not meeting his eyes. I should go pack. I can move in tomorrow. After she left, Adrian stood in that kitchen for a long time, wondering what the hell he'd just done. His father was going to kill him. The twins were going to be ecstatic. And Adrian was in so much trouble. Clara moved in on a Sunday with 2 suitcases and that canvas bag that went everywhere with her. The twins helped her unpack, treating it like Christmas morning. You're staying? Ellie kept asking. Like, staying. For a little while, Clara confirmed, hanging up her small collection of clothes. Can we have breakfast together every day? If your dad doesn't mind. He doesn't mind, Ava announced confidently. Dad's happy when you're here. Adrian, standing in the doorway, caught Clara's quick glance his way. He tried to look neutral, like his daughter hadn't just called him out. I'm happy when you're both well-behaved, he said instead. The twins rolled their eyes in perfect synchronization. Having Clara in the house changed everything in ways Adrian hadn't anticipated. She was there for breakfast, making the twins actually eat something besides cereal. She was there in the evenings when he came home exhausted, ready with coffee and a knowing look that said she understood. She was also there late at night when Adrian couldn't sleep and found himself wandering the house. More than once, he discovered her in the library, curled up in one of Emma's favorite chairs with a book. "Can't sleep either?" she'd ask. And they'd talk. About nothing important. Books, the garden, something funny the twins had said. But also about everything. About loss and loneliness, and how scary it was to care about people when you knew how badly it could hurt. Clara never mentioned the past she was clearly hiding from. Adrian never pushed, but he was starting to realize that whatever she was running from, it had left scars. 2 weeks after Clara moved in, Adrian's father came for dinner. Richard Hayes was 72, sharp as ever, and had opinions about everything his son did. He'd been increasingly vocal about his concerns regarding the twins' upbringing, Adrian's isolation, and now, undoubtedly, the mysterious woman living under his roof. "So you're Clara," Richard said, shaking her hand with an assessing gaze. "Yes, sir. It's nice to meet you. My granddaughters speak very highly of you. They're wonderful girls. And you're living here now." Clara didn't flinch. "Temporarily, I'm between apartments." "Convenient." "Dad," Adrian warned, but Clara just smiled calmly. "It is convenient, actually. Makes it easier to maintain the girls' schedule." Richard studied her for another long moment, then nodded slowly. "Let's eat." Dinner was tense. Richard asked pointed questions about Clara's background that she deflected skillfully. Adrian tried to run interference, but mostly just made things more awkward. The twins, oblivious to undercurrents, chatted happily about their garden. After the girls went to bed, Richard cornered Adrian in his office. "You want to explain what you're doing?" "She needed a place to stay. I have the room." "She works for you, Adrian." "I'm aware. Are you?" His father sat down heavily. "Because from where I'm sitting, you're getting attached to someone you know nothing about." "I know enough." "Do you? Where's her family? Why is she alone? What happened that made her desperate enough to live with an employer?" "None of that matters." "It all matters." Richard's voice rose. "You have daughters to protect, responsibilities. You can't just—" "Can't what? Feel something other than grief for the first time in years?" Adrian met his father's gaze. "Clara's good for the girls. She's good for this family. And what happens when she leaves?" The question hit harder than Adrian expected because he'd been carefully not thinking about it. "I don't know," he admitted. Richard's expression softened slightly. "I'm not trying to be cruel, son. I'm trying to protect you. All of you. This woman, there's something she's not telling you. Everyone has secrets." "Yes, but not everyone is living in your house, taking care of your children, and clearly making you feel things you haven't felt since Emma." Adrian couldn't argue because his father was right. "Just be careful," Richard said finally, "for everyone's sake." After his father left, Adrian found Clara in the kitchen again, her apparent refuge when things got complicated. "Your father doesn't trust me," she said without looking up from the tea she was making. "He doesn't trust anyone." "He's not wrong, though. He doesn't know anything about me. You don't know anything about me." Adrian leaned against the counter. "So tell me." Clara's hand tightened on her mug. "What do you want to know?" "Whatever you want to tell me." For a long moment, she was silent. Then, "I had a family once. A good one. We weren't wealthy, but we were happy. My dad worked hard, built a career he was proud of. My mom made our house feel like home. I thought that was my future too, the normal, safe, happy kind of life." "What happened?" "Everything fell apart." Clara's voice went flat. "Suddenly we went from comfortable to broke, from respected to radioactive. People we thought were friends disappeared. My mom got sick from the stress. My dad, he couldn't handle it. The shame, the blame. Clara, he died when I was 24. She said it quickly, like ripping off a bandage. Heart attack, they said. But really, it was everything else that killed him, the weight of it. Adrian moved closer. "I'm sorry. I spent the next 6 years trying to rebuild, taking any job I could get, watching my mom die slowly in a care facility I could barely afford, living in places that made me check the locks 5 times before sleeping, and telling myself that if I just worked hard enough, someday I'd have stable ground under my feet again. Is that why you needed this job? I needed this job because I was 2 weeks from being homeless. But I stayed. Clara finally looked at him. I stayed because your daughters reminded me what I'd lost, what family was supposed to feel like. And I know that's selfish. I know I should maintain professional distance, but they gave me something I didn't know I still needed. It's not selfish. Adrian was close enough now to see the tears she was fighting. And for what it's worth, you gave us something too. You gave us back something we'd lost. What? Each other. Clara let out a shaky breath. Your father's right to be suspicious. I'm not who you think I am. You're exactly who I think you are. Someone kind and strong and real in a world full of people pretending to be things they're not. You don't understand? Then help me understand. But Clara shook her head, stepping back. I can't. Not yet. Maybe not ever, and that's not fair to you or the girls. Let me decide what's fair. No. Clara set down her mug with trembling hands. Because you deserve better than someone with a past they can't explain. Your daughters deserve better. My daughters love you. Which is exactly why this is so complicated. Before Adrian could respond, Clara left the kitchen, retreating to her room and leaving him standing alone, surrounded by the careful life he'd built. A life that was starting to feel inadequate compared to the messy, complicated reality of actually feeling something again. Upstairs, Ava appeared in her doorway. Is Clara okay? Adrian crossed the hall to his daughter. She's fine, sweetheart. Just tired. Grandpa was mean to her at dinner. He was just being protective. Ava considered this seriously. We should protect Clara too. She doesn't have anybody else. Out of the mouths of 7-year-olds. You're right, Adrian said softly. We should. After tucking Ava back in, Adrian stood in the hallway between his daughter's room and Clara's closed door, caught between the past he couldn't change and a future he couldn't quite see yet. Whatever Clara was hiding, whatever had broken her family and left her alone, it didn't matter as much as his father thought it should. Because when Adrian looked at her, he didn't see secrets or complications. He saw someone fighting to build something better, someone who treated his daughters like they mattered, someone who made this enormous empty house feel like it could be a home again. And that was worth protecting. Even if it meant protecting her from his own father, from society's judgment, from whatever past she was running from. Even if it meant protecting her from him. The following Tuesday started like any other morning. Clara made pancakes while the twins argued about whose turn it was to water the garden. Adrian came downstairs already on his phone, dealing with some crisis in the Shanghai office. Normal. Routine. Then Clara's phone rang. She glanced at the screen and went completely still. The spatula in her hand clattered against the pan. I need to take this. Her voice came out wrong, too tight, too careful. Can you watch the pancakes? She was gone before Adrian could respond, disappearing into the hallway with the phone pressed to her ear. Who was that? Ellie asked through a mouthful of pancake. No idea. Adrian flipped the pancakes, but his attention was on the hallway where he could hear Clara's voice, low and urgent. I told you not to call me here. No, that's not... You can't just... A pause. Fine, but not at the house. When Clara came back, her face was carefully blank, the kind of blank that meant everything was wrong. Everything okay? Adrian asked. Fine, just an old friend. She took the spatula back with hands that shook slightly. Sorry about that. It was a lie. Adrian had spent years in boardrooms reading people, and Clara was a terrible liar. But the twins were there, so he let it go. For now. The rest of breakfast felt off. Clara was distracted, checking her phone every few minutes. When Adrian's father called to say he was coming by later, she actually flinched. I should probably be somewhere else when he arrives, Clara said quietly after the girls had run off to brush their teeth. You live here. You don't need to hide. I'm not hiding. I'm being considerate. Your father made his opinion pretty clear. My father doesn't get to decide who lives in my house. Clara smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. He's worried about you, about the girls. I can't really blame him. Clara, what's going on? Nothing. I'm just... She set down her coffee cup. I'm just aware that this situation is temporary. Your father's right to question it. Is this about the phone call? Clara's jaw tightened. I need to run some errands this afternoon. Will you be home with the girls? I have a meeting at 2. I'll be back before then. She was already grabbing her bag, moving toward the door with that same urgent energy from earlier. Clara, wait! But she was gone, practically running to catch the bus at the end of the drive. Adrian stood in the empty kitchen, surrounded by half-eaten pancakes, and the growing certainty that whatever Clara was hiding, it was about to blow up in all their faces. Richard Hayes arrived at 11, letting himself in like he still owned the place. He found Adrian in his office, staring at security footage of Clara getting on the bus. Please tell me you're not spying on your employee, Richard said. I'm worried about her. Or you're trying to figure out what she's hiding. His father sat down without being invited. Any luck? She got a phone call this morning. Upset her. Then she disappeared for the afternoon. Maybe she has a life outside this house. She doesn't. Adrian realized how that sounded. I mean, she doesn't talk about having anyone. No family, no friends she mentions. Just work. And you don't find that concerning? I find it sad. Richard sighed. Adrian, I love you. You know that. But you're thinking with your heart instead of your head. Maybe my head has been in charge for too long. Your head keeps you safe. Keeps the girls safe. Richard leaned forward. I did some digging. Adrian's stomach dropped. You what? Don't look at me like that. You hired a woman to live with your children. I had every right to check her background. I already ran a background check. She's clean. Surface level, yes. But if you dig deeper, Richard pulled out a folder. Clara Marie Bennett, daughter of James and Susan Bennett. Ring any bells? Should it? James Bennett worked for our company 20 years ago. He was a VP of operations under my watch. Adrian felt something cold settle in his chest. What happened? There was a scandal, missing funds, insider trading allegations, corporate espionage. The board investigated and found evidence pointing to Bennett. He claimed he was framed, that someone else had set him up, but the proof was pretty damning. We had to let him go. You fired him. We had no choice. The alternative was criminal charges and a public trial that would have destroyed the company's reputation. Bennett took the fall, signed an NDA, and disappeared with a severance package. Adrian's mind was racing. And Clara was 24 when it happened, just graduated from college. Her father's career was destroyed overnight. The family lost everything: house, savings, reputation. 6 months later, James Bennett died of a heart attack. Susan Bennett went into a care facility a year after that. And Clara, Richard tapped the folder. Clara spent the next 6 years working dead-end jobs, barely scraping by. That's why she needed this job so badly. That's why she targeted this job. Richard's voice was gentle but firm. Son, she's James Bennett's daughter. She grew up hearing about our family, about the company. Don't you think it's a little convenient that she just happened to put up a babysitting ad in the exact coffee shop you go to? That shop is nowhere near here. I'd never been there before. Exactly. So what were the odds you'd see that ad unless someone knew you'd be there? Adrian shook his head. You're saying she planned this? Engineered meeting me? I'm saying it's possible. And given her father's history with this family, her father who you destroyed, her father who stole from us. Richard's voice hardened. I know you want to see the best in people. It's one of your better qualities. But sometimes people have agendas. Clara isn't using my daughters for some revenge plot. You've seen her with them. That's real. Maybe. Or maybe she's a very good actress who saw an opportunity. Richard stood. I'm not saying fire her. I'm saying be careful. Protect yourself and those girls. After his father left, Adrian sat with that folder unopened on his desk for a long time. Clara had lied to him, not directly, but by omission. She'd known exactly who he was from the beginning, known about the connection between their families, about what the Hayes Empire had done to her father, and she'd said nothing. The question was why. When Clara returned that afternoon, Adrian was waiting in the living room. She stopped short when she saw him. The girls are at a play date, he said. We need to talk. Clara's face went pale. About what? About James Bennett. She actually swayed. Adrian stood, concerned, but she held up a hand. How did you find out? My father. Of course, Clara laughed bitterly. I should have known he'd dig into my background. Why didn't you tell me? Tell you what? That your family destroyed mine? That seemed like a great icebreaker for a job interview. You knew who I was. From the beginning. Clara met his eyes. Yes. And you didn't think that was important information? What difference would it have made? You needed help with your daughters. I needed a job. Our father's history didn't change either of those things. It changes everything. Adrian's voice rose. You let me trust you. Let my daughters trust you. All while hiding the fact that you have every reason to hate this family. I don't hate you. How am I supposed to believe that? Clara flinched like he'd slapped her. Because if I wanted revenge, Adrian, I'd have taken it by now. I've been living in your house for weeks. I've had access to your children, your personal space, your life. If I was the monster you're currently thinking I am, don't you think I would have done something? Then why hide it? Because I wanted one chance. Clara's composure cracked. One chance to be seen as myself instead of as James Bennett's daughter. Do you know what it's like to carry that name? To watch people's faces change when they find out who your father was? To be judged for something you had no control over? Your father stole from my family. My father was framed. Claire's voice went quiet, dangerous. He spent the last 6 months of his life trying to prove it, dying slowly while everyone he'd trusted turned their backs on him. And you want to talk about betrayal? If he was innocent, why didn't he fight it? Because your family gave him a choice. Take the severance and sign the NDA, or face criminal charges that would have bankrupted us in legal fees before we ever saw a courtroom. My father chose to protect his family the only way he could. Adrian wanted to argue, but something in Clara's voice stopped him. This wasn't the anger of someone caught in a lie. This was the pain of someone who'd been carrying a truth nobody wanted to hear. Why take a job with me? He asked instead. If you believe we destroyed your father, why get close to this family? Clara looked away. Honestly, at first I just needed the money. I saw the ad was from a Hayes address and I almost didn't call, but I was desperate. And then I met the girls. And what? You felt sorry for us? No. I felt like I understood them. Clara's eyes were bright with unshed tears. I knew what it was like to lose a parent, to feel like the world didn't make sense anymore, to be surrounded by people who didn't really see you, and I thought, maybe I could help. By lying? By giving them something I wish I'd had. Someone who gave a damn. Clara grabbed her bag. I should pack my things. What? This isn't working. Your father's right to be suspicious. I should never have taken this job. The girls will be fine. They were fine before me. They'll be fine after. Adrian watched her turn toward the stairs and felt something lurch in his chest. Clara, wait. She stopped but didn't turn around. I don't want you to go. You don't trust me. I don't know what to believe. Clara looked back at him, and Adrian saw exhaustion there, the kind that came from fighting battles nobody else could see. Believe whatever makes you feel safer, she said softly. But I'm done defending myself against crimes I didn't commit. She was gone before he could respond, footsteps echoing up the stairs. Adrian stood alone in his living room and realized that his father's revelations had accomplished exactly what they were meant to. They'd driven a wedge between him and Clara. The question was whether that wedge was protecting him or destroying something that could have been good. Upstairs, he could hear drawers opening and closing. Clara packing. Adrian pulled out his phone and made a call he probably shouldn't have. Dad, I need everything you have on the James Bennett case. All of it. Adrian, you owe me that much. If you're going to destroy this, at least let me see the evidence that started it all. Richard was silent for a long moment. I'll send over the files. Tonight. Tonight, his father agreed. The files arrived by courier 2 hours later. Adrian spread them across his desk, financial records, email chains, investigation reports, testimony transcripts, the paper trail that had ended James Bennett's career. And the more Adrian read, the more something felt wrong. The evidence was circumstantial. Bank transfers that could have been legitimate business expenses. Emails that seemed suspicious out of context but innocuous within it. Testimony from colleagues who stood to benefit from Bennett's removal. Nothing concrete. Nothing definitive. Just enough to create doubt. To make firing Bennett seem like the safer choice than investigating further. Adrian was still reading at midnight when his office door opened. Clara stood there in pajama pants and an old t-shirt, hair pulled back, eyes red. You're still up, she said unnecessarily. Can't sleep. Me neither. She gestured to the papers. What is all this? Your father's case files. Clara went very still. Why? Because I wanted to see what actually happened. And I think my family made a mistake. Clara crossed her arms, defensive. You mean you think my father might have been innocent? I think the investigation was rushed. I think people made assumptions. I think... Adrian rubbed his eyes. I think nobody wanted the truth as badly as they wanted the problem to go away. Does it matter now? He's dead. The damage is done. It matters to me. Adrian met her gaze. And I think it matters to you. Clara stayed in the doorway, not quite entering. What do you want me to say? I want you to tell me what really happened. I was 24. I wasn't exactly privy to boardroom politics. But your father talked to you in those last months. He must have said something. Clara was quiet for so long Adrian thought she wouldn't answer. Then she moved into the room, picked up one of the files, and stared at it like it might bite. He said someone was setting him up, she finally said. Someone with access to his accounts, his email, his office. He had suspicions about who, but no proof. Every time he tried to investigate, he hit walls. People stopped talking to him, files disappeared, and then the company offered him the severance deal and my mom begged him to take it. Why? Because she was already sick. Stress-induced autoimmune disorder. The scandal was killing her, and my dad, Clara's voice cracked. My dad chose saving his wife over saving his reputation. And then he died anyway. Heart attack at 53. The doctor said it was genetic, but I know better. You can't carry that much shame and stress and betrayal without it breaking something inside you. Adrian set down the file he was holding. I'm sorry. Are you? Or are you just saying what you think I want to hear? I'm sorry that my family didn't fight harder for the truth, that they took the easy way out, that your father paid the price for someone else's crime. Clara laughed, but it sounded damaged. You don't know it was a crime. Maybe your father was right. Maybe mine was guilty and just lied well enough to convince his family. You don't believe that? No, but it doesn't matter what I believe. It matters to me. Clara looked at him, really looked, searching for something. Why? Because Adrian stopped, the words catching. Because you matter to me. You and what happened to your family, and whether there's some way to make it right. You can't make it right. My parents are dead. My childhood home is someone else's now. Everything I thought my life would be is gone. Clara set down the file with trembling hands. But I survived. I'm still here. And I thought maybe, just maybe, I could build something new instead of drowning in something old. Is that what this job was? Building something new? At first, it was just survival. Then it was the girls. And then she trailed off. And then what? Clara shook her head. It doesn't matter. Tell me anyway. And then it was you. The words came out barely above a whisper. I started caring about you and this messed up family, and the possibility that maybe I could have something good again, which was stupid because I knew it couldn't last. Why not? Because look at us, Adrian. Look at this. She gestured at the files. Your family destroyed mine. There's too much history, too much pain. We were never going to work. We could try. Try what exactly? You don't trust me. Your father hates me, and every time you look at me, you're going to wonder if I'm playing some long game. I'm looking at you right now, Adrian said quietly, and I'm not wondering anything except why I'm standing on the wrong side of this desk. Clara's breath hitched. Adrian, I don't care about my father's suspicions. I don't care about corporate scandals from 20 years ago. I care that my daughters smile again. I care that this house feels like a home. I care that when I see you, I remember what it's like to feel something other than grief. That's not enough. Why not? Because feelings aren't enough when everything else is broken. The words hung between them, raw and true. Adrian moved around the desk slowly, giving Clara time to back away. She didn't. Maybe everything else being broken is exactly why feelings matter, he said. Maybe that's all we've got. Clara closed her eyes. This is a terrible idea. Probably. Your father will lose his mind. He'll get over it. The girls, Already love you. Adrian. Clara opened her eyes, and they were wet. I can't promise this works out. I can't promise I'm not going to mess everything up. I've spent 6 years barely holding my life together. I don't know how to be someone's whatever this is. Neither do I. But I'm willing to figure it out if you are. Clara laughed shakily. You're supposed to be the smart billionaire who thinks everything through. I did think this through for about 30 seconds. Then I realized thinking was getting in the way. That's possibly the worst decision-making process I've ever heard. Is it working? Clara looked at him for a long moment. Then she reached out and took his hand. I'm going to break your heart, she whispered, or I'll break yours. Or we'll break each other's, and your father will say he told us so. Definitely that one. Clara smiled despite the tears. Okay. Okay, we'll try. We'll figure it out. We'll probably fail spectacularly, but we'll try. Adrian pulled her closer, and Clara let him. Her forehead rested against his chest, and he could feel her shaking. I'm scared, she admitted. Me too. I haven't let myself want anything in so long. I don't know if I remember how. We'll learn together. They stood like that in the quiet office, surrounded by the paper ghosts of old betrayals and new possibilities. Outside, the mansion grounds spread out in expensive darkness. Inside, 2 broken people were trying to figure out if broken pieces could fit together into something whole. Eventually, Clara pulled back. I should let you sleep. Stay, just for a bit. So they sat on the couch in Adrian's office, not quite touching, but close enough. Clara picked up files occasionally, reading through her father's old case with eyes that understood more than she had at 24. Did you ever try to investigate? Adrian asked. After your father died? I thought about it, but I was broke, grieving, and dealing with my mom's medical bills. Fighting your family seemed impossible. What if I helped? Clara looked at him sharply. What? What if we investigated together, found out what really happened? Adrian, it's been 6 years. Evidence is gone. People have moved on. Or they've gotten comfortable, sloppy. Whoever framed your father probably thinks they got away with it. Even if we found something, what would it change? My parents are still dead. But their names could be cleared, and whoever actually committed the crime would face consequences. Clara was quiet for a long time. You'd really do that? Go against your own company? I'd go against anyone to find the truth. That's what my father taught me, even if he forgot it himself. Something shifted in Clara's expression. Hope, maybe. Or the dangerous possibility of it. Where would we even start? Adrian pulled out his phone. I have access to archived company files, security logs, financial records going back decades. If someone set your father up, there'll be traces. And if we don't find anything, then at least we tried. Clara nodded slowly. Okay, but not tonight. Tonight I just want to sit here and pretend everything's simple for a bit. So they did. They sat in that office until the sky started turning gray, talking about everything except corporate scandals and dead parents. They talked about the twins' garden and whether frogs really could freeze solid. They talked about books and bad movies and the weird way time felt different at 3 a.m. They talked like 2 people who'd forgotten how to be themselves and were slowly remembering. When the sun finally came up, Clara stood to leave. At the door, she turned back. Adrian, thank you. For what? For believing me, even when you didn't have to. After she left, Adrian sat alone with the files and thought about trust, about his father's warnings and Clara's secrets, and the complicated truth that people were rarely all good or all bad. Clara had lied by omission. But she'd also given his daughters back their smiles. She'd hidden her connection to his family, but she'd also brought warmth back into a cold house. Maybe that's what real people were, contradictions that somehow added up to something worth knowing. His phone buzzed, a text from his father. We need to talk about Clara. Adrian deleted it without responding. Whatever conversation was coming, it could wait. Right now, he had files to read and a mystery to solve and a woman upstairs who'd survived things that should have destroyed her. Right now, that felt more important than anything else. The twins woke up around 7, thundering downstairs with their usual chaos. They found Clara in the kitchen making breakfast like nothing had changed. Are you staying? Ava asked immediately. Clara glanced at Adrian, who'd followed his daughters down. Yeah, I'm staying. Ellie threw her arms around Clara's waist. Good. Because we planted more tomatoes yesterday and someone needs to help us take care of them. Someone being me? You're the best at plants. I'm the only one who remembers to water them. The girls giggled and Adrian watched this scene he'd seen dozens of times before. But now it felt different, weighted with possibility and danger in equal measure. Clara caught his eye over the twins' heads and smiled. It was tentative, uncertain, but real. And for the first time since Emma died, Adrian let himself think about a future that wasn't just survival. It was terrifying. It was also the only thing that felt true. The investigation started small. Adrian would stay up after the twins went to bed, pulling archived financial records, while Clara sat across from him, cross-referencing dates and transactions. They worked in careful silence, both aware they were looking for something that might not exist. "This is hopeless," Clara said after their third night of finding nothing. "It's been 6 years. If there was evidence, someone cleaned it up, or buried it deep enough that nobody would look." Adrian scrolled through another spreadsheet. Corporate investigations follow patterns. They look at the obvious stuff, bank records, emails, direct transfers. But what if whoever did this was smarter than that? Meaning? Meaning, what if the money didn't go missing all at once? What if it was small amounts over time, routed through legitimate-looking channels? Clara leaned forward. "You think someone embezzled gradually?" "I think someone was patient, set up your father to take the fall while they built themselves a nest egg nobody would notice. That's a lot of premeditation. That's a lot of money." Adrian pulled up another file. "The amount your father was accused of taking, $2 million over 3 years, that's significant but not catastrophic for a company this size, which is probably why nobody looked too hard. Easier to blame him and move on." Clara stared at the numbers on screen. "So where do we start?" "We start with who benefited from your father's removal, who got promoted after he left, who took over his accounts, who had the most to gain." They made a list, 7 names. 3 had retired, 2 had died, 1 had left the company years ago. That left 1, Marcus Vance, currently CFO and one of Richard Hayes' most trusted advisors. "No," Clara said immediately. "Marcus has been with your family for 30 years. He's practically family himself, which would make him the perfect person to get away with it." "Adrian, you can't seriously suspect—" "I'm not suspecting anyone yet. I'm following the evidence." He pulled up Marcus's employment history. "He was VP of Finance when your father was let go. Within 6 months, he was promoted to Senior VP. 2 years later, CFO. That could be coincidence. Or opportunity." Adrian kept clicking through files. "Marcus had access to everything. Your father's accounts, the financial systems, approval chains. If anyone could move money and make it look like someone else did it, he could." Clara wrapped her arms around herself. "If you're right, and Marcus framed my father, that means your family has been trusting a thief for 6 years. It means my family made a mistake 6 years ago and compounded it by not looking deeper." Adrian's jaw tightened. "And if Marcus did this, he's going to answer for it." "How? We have a theory and nothing else. That's not proof." "Not yet. But if Marcus has been stealing, he didn't stop after your father left. People like that don't just quit. They get bolder." Over the next week, Adrian quietly pulled financial records under the guise of routine audits. He compiled data going back 10 years, looking for patterns, small discrepancies, money that moved in ways that didn't quite make sense. And he found them. Hundreds of small transactions, each individually unremarkable, but together adding up to nearly $5 million routed through shell companies and offshore accounts. "I need to show this to my father," Adrian said, staring at the spreadsheet that represented years of systematic theft. Clara looked up from where she was helping Ellie with homework. "Are you sure?" "He deserves to know, and we need his authority to take this further. He's not going to want to believe it. Marcus is his friend. My father values truth over friendship, always has." Adrian hoped that was still accurate. Richard Hayes arrived that evening, annoyed at being summoned without explanation. He became significantly less annoyed when Adrian showed him the evidence. "This can't be right," Richard said, but his voice lacked conviction. "I've triple-checked the numbers. Someone's been systematically stealing from the company for at least a decade, probably longer." "And you think it's Marcus? He had means, motive, and opportunity. And he's the only one who benefited from from James Bennett's removal." Richard was silent for a long time, staring at the data. Finally, if this is true, if Marcus really did this, then you fired an innocent man and let a thief run your finances for 6 years. Don't. Richard's voice was sharp. Don't make this about being right. If Bennett was innocent, that's a tragedy. But I made the best decision I could with the information I had. The information Marcus gave you. Richard's face went gray. The investigation was thorough. The investigation was designed to find Bennett guilty. Marcus would have known exactly what breadcrumbs to leave. You're asking me to believe that someone I've trusted for 3 decades is a criminal. I'm showing you evidence and asking you to look at it honestly. Richard stood, pacing to the window. What do you want me to do? Launch a proper investigation. Bring in external auditors. Freeze Marcus's access until we know for sure. That could tip him off. If he's been stealing, he'll run. Then we move fast. Richard turned back, and Adrian saw something he'd rarely seen in his father: uncertainty. If we're wrong about this, we destroy an innocent man's reputation, just like we did with Bennett. And if we're right and do nothing, Marcus keeps stealing and my father's name stays ruined. Bennett isn't your father. No, but Clara's father was innocent, and we owe his family the truth. Richard's eyes sharpened. This is about the girl. This is about justice. Don't confuse the two. Richard moved closer. You're emotionally involved with someone whose father we destroyed, whose father you wrongly destroyed, and now you're building a case that conveniently exonerates him and validates her. Can you honestly tell me you're being objective? Adrian met his father's gaze. Can you honestly tell me you want to keep trusting someone who might have been robbing you blind for a decade? The silence stretched between them, filled with too many implications. I'll authorize the investigation, Richard finally said, but we do this right. External firm, complete audit, no conclusions until we have absolute proof. Agreed. And Adrian, if this blows up in our faces, if Marcus is innocent and we've damaged him based on your girlfriend's vendetta, Clara doesn't have a vendetta, she just wants the truth. Everyone thinks they want the truth until they get it. Richard headed for the door. Be prepared for whatever we find. It might not be what either of you wants to hear. After his father left, Adrian found Clara in the twins' room, reading them a bedtime story. She looked up when he appeared in the doorway, question in her eyes. He's authorizing the investigation, Adrian said quietly. Clara's breath caught. Really? External auditors start Monday. After the girls were asleep, they sat on the back patio overlooking the garden the twins had planted. The tomatoes were starting to grow, small green promises of eventual fruit. What if we're wrong? Clara asked into the darkness. What if there's an explanation for all those transactions and Marcus is innocent? Then we apologize and move on. And if we're right, then your father's name gets cleared and a criminal faces consequences. Clara pulled her knees up to her chest. It won't bring him back, won't undo what happened to my family. No, but it might give you some peace. I don't think I remember what peace feels like. Adrian reached over and took her hand. We'll figure it out together. Clara laced her fingers through his. Your father thinks I'm using you. My father thinks everyone has ulterior motives. Do I? Do you what? Have ulterior motives? For being here? For this? She gestured between them. Adrian considered the question seriously. I think you needed a job and took one. I think you connected with my daughters because you genuinely care about kids who are hurting. And I think whatever this is between us scares you as much as it scares me. That's not an answer. The answer is no. You're not using me. You're just trying to survive and maybe build something better. That's not an ulterior motive. That's being human. Clara rested her head on his shoulder. I'm going to disappoint you eventually. I'm not good at this. Relationships, vulnerability, letting people in. I've spent 6 years keeping everyone at arm's length. So have I. You had a marriage. You know how to do this. I had a marriage that ended before I was 30, and I've been hiding in work ever since because grief is easier than connection. Adrian turned to look at her. We're both terrible at this. Maybe that's okay. Or maybe we're setting ourselves up for disaster. Probably that too. Clara laughed shakily. We're a mess. Completely? Your father's going to hate this. He'll adjust. The girls already love you. We covered this. I know, but what if this doesn't work out and they lose someone else they care about? What if it does work out, and they get to see that sometimes good things happen after bad things? Clara was quiet for a moment. You're an optimist. I didn't expect that from a billionaire. I'm not an optimist. I'm just tired of being miserable. She kissed him then, soft and tentative, and tasting like the mint tea she'd had after dinner. Adrian pulled her closer, and for a moment everything else fell away. The investigation, his father's disapproval, Clara's complicated past. None of it mattered as much as this. When they finally pulled apart, Clara was crying. What's wrong? Nothing. Everything. I don't know. She wiped her eyes. I just didn't think I'd get to have this again. Something good. Something that felt real. It is real. For now. Until it isn't. Why are you so convinced this is going to end badly? Clara looked at him with eyes that had seen too much. Because everything else has. Adrian wanted to argue, to promise that this would be different, but he'd made promises before. He'd told Emma they'd have decades together. He'd told his daughters everything would be okay. Life didn't care about promises. I can't guarantee this works out, he said instead. I can't promise we don't hurt each other or mess this up or decide we were wrong, but I can promise I'm going to try. And right now, that's all I've got. Clara nodded slowly. Okay, we try. We try. They sat together in the dark, holding hands and watching the garden grow. The investigation moved quickly once Richard gave the order. External auditors descended on company headquarters, pulling records and interviewing staff. Marcus Vance cooperated fully, seemingly unconcerned. He's too calm, Clara said, watching footage of Marcus's interview. Adrian had gotten his head of security to share the feeds. If he's guilty, he should be nervous. Or he's confident he covered his tracks. Or he's actually innocent, and we're about to ruin another person's life. Adrian could hear the fear in her voice. She wanted her father vindicated, but not at the cost of becoming what the Hayes family had been to the Bennetts, destroyers of innocent people. 3 days into the audit, the lead investigator called Adrian. Mr. Hayes, we found something. You should come down to the office. Adrian drove into the city with a knot in his stomach. Clara had wanted to come, but he'd convinced her to stay with the twins. If this went badly, he wanted to shield her from it as long as possible. The investigator, a sharp-eyed woman named Patricia Chen, met him in a conference room papered with financial documents. We tracked the shell companies, she said without preamble. Followed the money through 6 different offshore accounts. Very sophisticated setup, designed to look like legitimate business expenses and consulting fees. And it all traces back to accounts controlled by Marcus Vance. He's been siphoning money from the company for at least 12 years. We're still calculating the total, but we're over $8 million at this point. Adrian sat down heavily. You're sure? Positive. He got sloppy in recent years. Larger transactions, fewer intermediary steps. Probably thought he was untouchable. Patricia pulled out another file. We also found evidence he framed James Bennett. Show me. Patricia laid out the trail. Marcus had used Bennett's login credentials to make several suspicious transfers. He'd planted emails in Bennett's account. He'd manipulated records to make it look like Bennett was creating false consulting contracts. How did he get Bennett's credentials? Bennett's assistant at the time was a woman named Sarah Reeves. She and Marcus were having an affair. She gave him access. Where's Sarah now? Dead. Car accident 4 years ago. Patricia's expression suggested she didn't think it was coincidental. Adrian stared at the evidence of systematic long-term fraud and the destruction of an innocent man's life. My father needs to see this. He's in the building. We called him 20 minutes ago. Richard Hayes looked like he'd aged a decade when he walked into the conference room. Patricia went through everything again, methodical and thorough. When she finished, Richard sat in silence. I destroyed an innocent man, he finally said. Marcus destroyed him, Patricia corrected. You were working with false information. I should have looked deeper, should have questioned more. You trusted someone you had no reason not to trust. Patricia began gathering files. The question now is what you want to do about it. We prosecute, Richard said immediately. Full extent of the law, and we issue a public statement clearing James Bennett's name. That's going to raise questions about the company's oversight and controls. Let it. We made a mistake. We're correcting it. Richard looked at Adrian. Where's Clara? Home with the girls. Bring her here. She deserves to hear this directly. Adrian made the call, and Clara arrived 40 minutes later looking terrified. She'd clearly been crying on the drive over. "Is it true?" she asked before anyone could speak. "Was my father innocent?" Richard stood, and for the first time in Adrian's memory, his father looked genuinely humbled. "Yes, I'm sorry. We were wrong." Claire's knees buckled. Adrian caught her, helped her into a chair. "Marcus Vance framed him," Richard continued. "Used him as a scapegoat for his own embezzlement. Your father was completely innocent." "I need to see it," Clara whispered. "The evidence. I need to see proof." Patricia showed her everything. Clara read through documents with shaking hands, tears streaming down her face. "My father died thinking everyone believed he was a thief," she said. "My mother died believing it. I've spent 6 years wondering if maybe they were right, if maybe he really did do it, and just lied well enough to fool us." "He didn't lie," Richard said quietly. "He told you the truth, and we should have listened." Clara looked up at him. "You offered him that severance deal, made him sign the NDA, gave him no choice but to walk away." "I did, and I can't undo that. But I can make sure the truth comes out now." "It's 6 years too late." "I know, but it's all I can offer." Clara stood, clutching the files like they might disappear. "I want a public apology, not just a statement. I want the Hayes family to admit publicly that they destroyed an innocent man." "Done. And I want Marcus Vance to face actual jail time, not some white-collar plea deal where he pays a fine and walks away." "We'll push for the maximum sentence," Richard promised. "And I want my father's name restored. Official company records corrected, his reputation cleared. All of it, whatever you want." Clara's laugh was bitter. "What I want is my parents back. What I want is the last 6 years of my life returned. What I want is to not have spent every day wondering if I was the daughter of a criminal." She threw the files on the table. "But I'll settle for justice." Richard nodded. "You'll have it." After the meeting, Adrian drove Clara home in silence. She stared out the window, processing. "Say something," Adrian finally said. "I don't know what to feel. Relief? Anger? Vindication?" Clara turned to him. "My father was innocent. I always believed it, but there was this small part of me that wondered. That thought maybe I was just being a loyal daughter, seeing what I wanted to see." "You were seeing the truth. And it didn't matter, because the truth didn't save him. It didn't stop him from dying. It didn't give my mother a few more years." Clara's voice rose. "It didn't change anything, except now I know for certain that your family destroyed mine for no reason. Not for no reason, because Marcus manipulated—" "Because your father didn't ask enough questions." Clara's composure shattered. "Because it was easier to believe my dad was guilty than to keep investigating. Because we weren't important enough, weren't wealthy enough, weren't connected enough to deserve real justice." Adrian pulled over, put the car in park. "You're right. I don't want to be right. I want my father alive." "I know. Do you? Do you really understand what it's like to watch your family lose everything while the people who destroyed you live in mansions and drive expensive cars and never face consequences?" "No, I don't." Clara deflated. "I'm sorry, that's not fair. You didn't do this." "My family did. That's close enough." They sat on the side of the road, both lost in their own thoughts. "What happens now?" Clara finally asked. "The company presses charges. Marcus gets arrested. There's probably a trial." "And us?" Adrian looked at her. "What about us?" "Your father apologizing to me doesn't change history, doesn't make the power imbalance go away. I'm still the woman whose family was destroyed by yours. You're also the woman I'm falling in love with." The words hung in the air between them. Clara stared at him. "Don't," she whispered. "Don't what?" "Don't say things like that when everything's falling apart. Everything's not falling apart. It's finally coming together. For you, maybe. For me, it's just another reminder that I lost 6 years to a lie." Clara wiped her eyes. "Take me home. I need to think." The drive back to the estate was silent. Clara went straight to her room. Adrian checked on the twins, already asleep, thank God, then sat in his office staring at nothing. He told Clara he was falling in love with her. True, and terrifying, and probably the worst possible timing. She was processing the vindication of her father, the waste of 6 years, the confirmation that the Hayes family had destroyed hers, and he'd chosen that moment to make it about feelings. Idiot. Around midnight, his door opened. Clara stood there in pajamas, eyes red from crying. I can't sleep. Me neither. She crossed to where he sat and climbed into his lap, burying her face in his neck. Adrian wrapped his arms around her and just held on. I don't know how to feel good about this, Clara said against his shoulder. I wanted vindication, but now that I have it, it just makes me angrier. At Marcus, at your father, at the universe for being so unfair. That's allowed? Is it? Or am I supposed to be grateful that the truth finally came out? You're allowed to be whatever you feel. Clara pulled back to look at him. Earlier, when you said you were falling in love with me, I meant it. I know. That's what scares me. She touched his face. Because I'm falling too. And I don't know if that's real or if it's just us both being broken people who found each other at the right time. Does it matter? Maybe not. But I need you to understand something. Claire's eyes were serious. I'm not going to be easy to love. I'm angry and damaged, and I don't trust good things because they always disappear. I'm going to push you away and sabotage this because that's what I do when things matter. Okay? Okay? I'm not exactly prize material either. I'm emotionally unavailable, I work too much, and I use money to fix things instead of actually dealing with them. We're both disasters. So what do? We try anyway. We mess up and apologize and keep trying. Clara kissed him, desperate and needy and real. Adrian kissed back, pouring 6 years of loneliness into it. They ended up on the couch in his office, tangled together in a way that blurred lines they'd been carefully maintaining. Hands in hair, breath coming fast, both of them reaching for something they'd been denying. We shouldn't, Clara whispered against his mouth. Probably not. The girls are upstairs, asleep. This is complicated. Everything's complicated. Clara laughed and kissed him again. And for a little while, in the dark of his office with the world locked outside, nothing was complicated at all. Nothing except two people trying to figure out if broken things could heal together. Later, much later, they lay on that couch with Clara's head on Adrian's chest, both of them half-dressed and quiet. I do love you, Clara said softly, in case that wasn't clear. It was clear. This is still terrifying. Completely. But maybe worth it? Adrian tightened his arms around her. Definitely worth it. They fell asleep like that, tangled together on a couch that was too small for both of them, in a house that was finally starting to feel less empty. Upstairs, in twin beds decorated with princesses and stars, 2 7-year-old girls slept peacefully, dreaming of gardens that would bloom and stories that might end happily after all. Morning came too early. Adrian woke to find Clara already gone from the couch, a blanket draped over him that she must have retrieved from somewhere. His neck ached from the awkward angle, and he had approximately 15 minutes before the twins would come thundering down demanding breakfast. He found Clara in the kitchen, fully dressed, making coffee like the previous night hadn't happened. Her hair was still damp from a shower. Hey, he said carefully. Morning. She didn't look at him. I'm making pancakes. The girls will be up soon. Clara. We should probably talk about what we're going to tell them, about everything. Adrian moved closer. Which everything? Us or the investigation? Both, either. I don't know. Clara finally met his eyes, and he saw exhaustion there. I didn't sleep much after I went upstairs. Regrets? About last night? No, about everything else? Constantly. She poured him coffee without asking. Your father's holding a press conference this afternoon, announcing the investigation results and clearing my father's name. You don't sound happy about it. I am, I think. It's just... Clara leaned against the counter. Once that happens, everyone's going to know who I am. They're going to know I'm living in your house, working for you, sleeping with you. The optics are terrible. I don't care about optics. Well, you should. You have daughters to protect and a company to run. People are going to say I manipulated this whole situation. People are going to say whatever they want regardless. Adrian took the coffee she offered. What matters is what's actually true. And what is actually true? That you needed a job and I needed help. That my daughters are happier because of you. That we're both trying to figure out how to be less broken. Clara smiled despite herself. When you put it that way, it sounds almost healthy. I know. Weird, right? The sound of small feet on stairs interrupted them. The twins appeared, already arguing about something incomprehensible. "Clara!" Ellie launched herself at Clara's legs. "Can we check the garden before school? I think the tomatoes got bigger." "They definitely got bigger overnight," Ava added seriously. "Plants grow at night. We learned that in science." Clara caught Adrian's eye over their heads, and something passed between them. An acknowledgement that whatever they were figuring out, these two girls were at the center of it. "Garden first, then breakfast," Clara decided. "But shoes on. And actual shoes, not your princess slippers." The girls ran off to find proper footwear, and Clara turned back to Adrian. "We need to tell them something, before the news breaks and they hear it at school or from someone else." "Tell them what exactly? That their babysitter's father was wrongly accused by their grandfather?" "That's definitely too complex for 7-year-olds. Clara poured more batter onto the griddle. "Maybe just that some grown-up stuff is happening, but everyone's okay?" "They're going to have questions. Then we answer them. Together." The word "together" settled between them, carrying weight neither of them quite knew how to handle yet. Breakfast was chaotic in the way mornings with twins always were. Ellie spilled juice. Ava wanted to bring a tomato plant to show and tell. Clara negotiated while Adrian tried to read emails about the impending press conference and failed because he kept getting distracted by the sound of Clara laughing at something Ellie said. This was what he'd been missing without knowing it. Not perfection. Clara was right that they were both disasters. But the messy, complicated reality of people who cared about each other, trying to make it work. After the girls left for school, the house fell into its usual mid-morning quiet. Clara started cleaning the kitchen. Adrian should have been getting ready for the office, but instead he just watched her move through the space like she belonged there. "I can feel you staring," Clara said without turning around. "Sorry." "No, you're not." She glanced back with a small smile. "What are you thinking about?" "How normal this feels. How much I didn't realize I needed normal." Clara set down the dish she was washing. "Adrian, once that press conference happens, normal is over. You understand that, right? Reporters are going to dig into my life, our connection, why I'm living here. It's going to be invasive and ugly. So we deal with it." "Easy for you to say. You're used to media attention. I've spent 6 years trying to be invisible." "You don't have to be invisible anymore. Your father's name is being cleared. You can stop hiding." Clara's expression complicated. "What if I don't know how to not hide? What if invisibility is all I have left?" Adrian crossed to where she stood and took her hands, still damp from dishwater. "Then we figure it out together. You keep saying that word like it scares you. It does scare me. Together means counting on someone. It means vulnerability. It means things can fall apart and hurt worse because you let someone in. It also means not being alone. I've been alone for 6 years. I'm good at it. Being good at something doesn't mean it's what you should keep doing." Adrian pulled her closer. "I'm good at working 18-hour days and never dealing with my emotions. Doesn't make it healthy." Clara rested her forehead against his chest. "We're both so bad at this." "Terrible. Your father probably still thinks I'm using you." "My father's opinion is not at the top of my priority list right now." "What is?" Adrian tilted her face up. "Not screwing this up, keeping my daughters happy, figuring out how to make you smile more than you worry. That's a terrible priority list, very unfocused. I'm working on it." Clara kissed him, soft and slow, different from the desperate intensity of last night. This felt like a decision rather than a surrender. "I have to go deal with some things before the press conference," she said when they pulled apart. "Legal stuff, paperwork. My father's attorney, well, former attorney, wants to meet." "Want me to come with you?" "No, this is something I need to do alone." Clara grabbed her bag. "But thank you for offering." After she left, Adrian finally headed to the office. The building was buzzing with news of the investigation, Marcus's arrest, the impending press conference. People whispered when Adrian walked by, questions in their eyes they were too professional to voice. He found his father in the executive conference room, reviewing the press statement with the legal team and PR advisors. "Adrian," Richard looked up. "Good, you're here. We need to finalize the wording." Adrian read through the statement. It was carefully crafted, legally precise, and completely bloodless. "This makes it sound like an unfortunate accounting error," Adrian said. not like someone was framed and died because of it. We have to be careful about liability. One of the lawyers started. No, Adrian cut him off. We have to be honest. James Bennett was an innocent man who was systematically framed by someone he trusted. He lost his career, his health, his life. His family was destroyed, and we helped make that happen because we didn't ask enough questions. Adrian, Richard said quietly, I know you're close to the daughter. This isn't about Clara. This is about doing the right thing instead of the convenient thing. The room fell silent. Richard studied his son for a long moment. Rewrite it, Richard finally told the PR team. Make it honest. We made a mistake. We're correcting it, and we're deeply sorry for the harm caused. The lawyers looked pained but started taking notes. I'll be making the statement personally, Richard added, and I'll be taking questions. Sir, that's not advisable, the head of PR protested. Unscripted responses could open us up to, I don't care. James Bennett deserves more than a carefully crafted non-apology. Richard looked at Adrian. You were right. We chose convenience over truth. That stops now. After the meeting dispersed, Adrian stayed behind with his father. Thank you, Adrian said. Don't thank me for doing what I should have done 6 years ago. Richard sat down heavily. I've been thinking about Clara, about you two. Dad, let me finish. Richard held up a hand. I was wrong about her. She's not using you. She's not after money or revenge. She's just a woman who got dealt a terrible hand and is trying to survive it with some dignity and tact. I know. And you love her. It wasn't a question. Adrian nodded anyway. Then you need to protect her, Richard said, from the media circus that's about to descend, from people who will absolutely try to paint her as a gold digger or a con artist, from the pressure of being associated with this family. I'm trying. Try harder. Because if you really love her, you need to think about whether being with you is actually what's best for her. The words hit harder than Adrian expected. What are you saying? I'm saying that girl has spent 6 years in hell. She's finally getting justice for her father. She's building a life. And we represent everything that destroyed her family. Richard's voice was gentle but firm. Maybe the kindest thing you could do is let her have a fresh start, away from the Hayes name and everything that comes with it. You're telling me to break up with her. I'm telling you to think about what she needs instead of what you want. Adrian wanted to argue, to say that Clara needed him, that they were good together, that walking away would hurt them both. But underneath the defensiveness was an uncomfortable question. Was his father right? The press conference was scheduled for 2 in the afternoon. Adrian watched from the back of the room as his father took the podium, looking older than Adrian had ever seen him. Good afternoon. I'm here today to address a serious injustice that occurred 6 years ago under my leadership. Richard went through the facts methodically. The investigation of James Bennett, the evidence they'd used to justify his termination, the recent discovery that all of it had been fabricated by Marcus Vance. James Bennett was an innocent man, Richard said, his voice carrying across the silent room. He was loyal, honest, and dedicated to this company. And we failed him. I failed him. Instead of conducting a thorough investigation, we accepted the evidence at face value. Instead of giving him the benefit of the doubt, we chose to protect the company's reputation. That was wrong. Reporters were scribbling furiously. Cameras flashed. Mr. Bennett lost his career, his health, and ultimately his life because of our failure to seek the truth. His family suffered immeasurably, and for that I am profoundly sorry. Richard paused. We cannot undo the damage. We cannot bring back the years he lost or ease his family's pain, but we can acknowledge the truth. James Bennett was innocent. His name is cleared, and Marcus Vance will face the full consequences of his crimes. The questions came fast after that. Richard answered them all honestly, not hiding behind corporate speak or legal evasions. He admitted fault. He apologized. He promised systematic changes to prevent such injustice from happening again. Adrian watched and felt something shift in his understanding of his father. This wasn't the calculating businessman who'd raised him. This was a man confronting his mistakes head-on, regardless of cost. Afterward, back in Richard's office, they sat in silence for a while. That was brave, Adrian finally said. That was necessary. Richard loosened his tie. Where's Clara? I thought she'd be here. She said she needed to handle some things alone. Probably smart. The media is going to be looking for her now. As if summoned by the comment, Adrian's phone rang. Clara. Hey? He answered. You watching the conference? I was. Her voice sounded strange. Adrian, I need to talk to you. Okay. Want me to come home? No, I'm actually at a lawyer's office downtown. Can you meet me here? Is something wrong? Just, please come. I'll text you the address. Adrian made excuses to his father and drove to an office building in the financial district. Clara was waiting in a conference room with an older man in an expensive suit. Adrian, this is Robert Chen. He was my father's attorney. They shook hands. Chen gestured for Adrian to sit. I've been handling what's left of the Bennett estate, Chen explained, which until recently wasn't much. But given today's developments, there are some matters to address. What kind of matters? Adrian looked at Clara, trying to read her expression. Your father's public admission of wrongful termination changes things legally, Chen said. Ms. Bennett is entitled to compensation, back pay for her father, damages for reputational harm, potentially punitive damages given the severity of the consequences. How much are we talking about? Conservatively, 8 to 10 million, possibly more if we push. The number hung in the air. Adrian looked at Clara, who was staring at the table. That's not even counting what she could get from Marcus Vance's assets, Chen continued. Once his stolen funds are recovered, victims will have claims. As the daughter of his primary scapegoat, Clara has a strong case. I don't want his money, Clara said quietly. Ms. Bennett, I don't want it. Clara's voice was firmer now. Whatever gets recovered should go to the actual victims. People he stole from, not me. You are an actual victim, Chen pointed out gently. I'm a collateral victim. There's a difference. Clara finally looked up at Adrian. But the wrongful termination settlement, that's different. That's what my father was owed, what my mother could have used for medical care, what might have changed everything. Adrian understood what she wasn't saying. This money was 6 years too late to help the people who needed it. What do you want to do? He asked. Clara's laugh was bitter. I want to go back in time and save my parents, since that's not an option. She turned to Chen. I want to set up a foundation, in my father's name, for families dealing with wrongful termination, legal fees they can't afford, people fighting corporate injustice. That's very generous, Chen said carefully. But you should keep something for yourself. You've struggled financially for years. This is your chance to have security. I have security. Clara glanced at Adrian, then away. I have a job, a place to live. I don't need millions of dollars. You might not always have those things, Adrian said quietly, and Clara flinched. The settlement will take months to finalize anyway, Chen said. You don't have to decide everything now. Just think about it. Consider what your father would want for you. After the meeting, Adrian and Clara stood on the sidewalk outside the building. The late afternoon sun cut between skyscrapers, casting long shadows. You should keep some of that money, Adrian said. Use it to build a real life, independent of me and my family. Clara turned to him. Is that what you want? For me to be independent of you? I want you to have choices, options, not to be stuck relying on someone because you have nowhere else to go. I'm not stuck, Adrian. I'm choosing to be there. Are you? Or are you just taking what's available because it's better than the alternative? Clara's eyes flashed. Don't do that. Don't diminish what we have because you're scared. I'm not scared. I'm realistic. My father was right. Your father? This is because of what Richard said? He pointed out that being associated with my family might not be what's best for you, that you deserve a fresh start. And you agreed with him. Clara's voice went flat. Of course you did, because it's easier to push me away than actually deal with the fact that this is complicated. I'm not pushing you away. I'm trying to give you space to make decisions that aren't influenced by financial need or gratitude or what? Love? Clara stepped closer. You can say it, Adrian. You're trying to give me space to decide if I love you or just love what you represent. Security, stability, a family. Don't you wonder that yourself? The question stopped her. Clara wrapped her arms around herself. Every day, she admitted. I wonder if I'm just so desperate for something good that I'm confusing gratitude with love. If I'm using your daughters to fill the hole my parents left. If any of this is real or just two lonely people convincing themselves they found something. That's what I'm trying to say. You should have time to figure that out without the pressure of living in my house and depending on my paycheck. So what? I move out? We stop seeing each other? Give it 6 months and see if we still have feelings? Adrian hadn't thought that far ahead. Maybe? Clara laughed, but it sounded broken. You're such a coward. Excuse me? You heard me. You'd rather end this preemptively than risk it actually failing. You'd rather push me away now while you can pretend it's noble instead of waiting to see if we can make it work. That's not what I'm doing. Then what are you doing? I'm trying to protect you. I don't need protection. I need someone who's willing to fight for this instead of finding excuses to run. They stood facing each other on a busy sidewalk, both breathing hard, while pedestrians flowed around them like water around rocks. My father said something else, Adrian said finally. He said, I needed to think about what's best for you instead of what I want. And you decided what's best for me is being alone? I decided what's best for you is having the freedom to choose without complications. Life is complications, Adrian. Relationships are complications. You don't get to love someone and keep it simple. I'm not good at complications. Neither am I, but I was willing to try. Clara's eyes were wet. I guess you're not. She turned to walk away and Adrian caught her arm. Wait, just wait. Clara stopped but didn't turn around. I don't know what I'm doing, Adrian said. I loved someone once, and she died and left me with 2 kids I could barely talk to in a house that felt like a museum. And then you showed up and suddenly everything was harder and easier at the same time, and that terrifies me. So you're choosing easier. I'm choosing to give you options. You're choosing to run. Clara pulled her arm free and finally looked at him. And here's the thing about running, Adrian. Sometimes the person you're running from doesn't chase you. Sometimes they just let you go. Clara, I'm going to go collect my things from your house. I'll be gone before the girls get home from school. You can tell them whatever you want about why I left. You can't just leave. They love you. And I love them, which is why I'm not going to let them watch us fall apart in slow motion. Clara's voice cracked. They've lost enough people. Better a clean break now than a messy ending later. This doesn't have to be an ending. You made it one the moment you started talking about space and options and what's best for me, like I'm incapable of deciding that for myself. Clara started walking backward, away from him. For what it's worth, I did love you. I do love you. But I spent 6 years surviving people who didn't believe in me. I'm not doing it again. She turned and disappeared into the crowd before Adrian could respond. He stood there on that sidewalk, surrounded by people rushing to wherever they needed to be, and realized he'd just made the worst decision of his life. By the time Adrian got home, Clara's room was empty. The drawers were cleared out, the closet bare, the bed stripped. The only sign she'd ever been there was a note on the dresser. Tell the girls I'm sorry. Tell them it's not their fault. Tell them their garden will keep growing even when I'm not there to water it. Tell them I love them. And tell yourself whatever you need to make this feel like the right choice. See, Adrian sat on the edge of the empty bed and let himself feel the full weight of what he'd done. The twins came home an hour later, full of stories about their day. They went looking for Clara immediately. Where is she? Ellie asked, checking the kitchen. She had to leave, Adrian said, the words tasting like ash. Both girls stopped, turned to look at him with identical expressions of betrayal. Leave where? Ava asked carefully. Just leave. She won't be staying here anymore. Why not? Ellie's voice was getting higher, panic setting in. It's complicated, sweetheart. Did you fire her? Ava's eyes were filling with tears. Did Clara do something wrong? No, nobody did anything wrong. It just didn't work out. That's what you said about the other nannies, Ellie said. But Clara wasn't like them. Clara was different. I know. Then why did she leave? Ava was fully crying now. Didn't she love us? Adrian pulled his daughters close, feeling them shake with sobs, and hated himself more than he thought possible. She loved you very much. She loves you. This wasn't about you. Then what was it about? Ellie pulled away, angry through her tears. If she loved us and we loved her, why isn't she here? Adrian didn't have an answer that would make sense to 7-year-olds. Hell, he didn't have an answer that made sense to himself. Sometimes grown-ups make things complicated, he tried. That's a stupid answer, Ellie said, and ran upstairs. Ava stayed, looking at her father with an expression too old for her face. You made her leave, she said quietly. Didn't you? Ava, Grandpa was mean to her and you believed him, and now she's gone. Ava's voice was steady despite the tears. Just like Mom left. That's different. Mom didn't choose to leave. But Clara did, because of you. She followed her sister upstairs, leaving Adrian alone in a house that had briefly felt like a home, and now felt like a mausoleum again. His phone rang. His father. The girls okay? Richard asked. No, they're devastated. I'm sorry, I know this is hard. You were wrong, Adrian said. About Clara, about what she needed, about what's best. Adrian, she loved me, us, and I pushed her away because I was scared, because you planted doubts and I let them grow instead of trusting what I knew. Richard was quiet for a long moment. What are you going to do? I don't know. Grovel, probably. If she'll even talk to me. Do you love her? Yes. Then fight for her. Don't make the same mistake I made. Adrian pulled the phone away from his ear to stare at it. What mistake? Choosing what seemed practical over what my heart wanted. I did it once, long ago, and I've regretted it ever since. Richard's voice was heavy with old pain. Don't be like me, son. Don't let fear win. After hanging up, Adrian went upstairs to check on the twins. They were both in Ava's room, curled up together on the bed. Can we call Clara? Ellie asked without looking at him. I don't think she wants to talk to me right now. We don't want you to call. We want to call her ourselves. Adrian hesitated, then handed over his phone with Clara's number pulled up. The girls dialed on speaker. Clara answered on the third ring. Hello? Clara, it's us, Ava said quickly. Oh. Clara's voice immediately changed, getting softer. Hi, sweethearts. Why did you leave? Ellie demanded. Did we do something wrong? No, you two are perfect. This has nothing to do with you. Then come back. I can't, honey. Why not? Clara was quiet for a long moment. Because sometimes things change, and I can't stay in your house anymore. Is it because of Dad? Ava asked. Did he make you leave? No, well, it's complicated. Everyone keeps saying that, Ellie said frustratedly. We're not babies. We can understand complicated. Okay, the truth is your dad and I, we had different ideas about what was best, and I decided it would be easier for everyone if I found somewhere else to live. But you're still our friend, right? Ava's voice was small. Always. I'll always be your friend. Can we still see you? Clara's voice cracked. I don't know, baby. That's up to your dad. Both girls looked at Adrian. He took the phone. Clara. She hung up. Adrian tried calling back, but it went straight to voicemail. He tried 3 more times with the same result. She doesn't want to talk to you, Ellie observed. I noticed. You should fix it, Ava said. I don't know how. Figure it out. You're the grown-up. Both girls stared at him with expressions that said they'd lost faith in grown-ups making good decisions. Adrian went back to his office and pulled up Clara's employment file, looking for emergency contact information. There was only one number listed, the same cell she'd just blocked him on. He tried another approach, calling the lawyer, Robert Chen. Mr. Hayes, I wasn't expecting to hear from you so soon. I need to find Clara. She's not answering her phone. I'm not sure I should give you her location. Please, I made a mistake. I need to apologize. Chen sighed. She's staying at an extended stay hotel downtown, the Meridian on 5th Street. But Mr. Hayes, if you're going to show up, make sure you have something worth saying. That woman's been through enough. Adrian thanked him and hung up. It was already past 8. The girls needed dinner, homework help, bedtime routines. But they also needed to see their father fight for something instead of just accepting loss. Get your shoes on, he told the twins. Where are we going? Ellie asked. To fix what I broke. The Meridian Hotel was the kind of place people stayed when they were between lives. Corporate relocations, messy divorces, waiting for apartment leases to start. The lobby smelled like industrial carpet cleaner, and the potted plants were plastic. Adrian held each twin's hand as they walked to the front desk. The clerk looked up from her computer, took in the expensive suit and 2 pajama-clad children, and raised an eyebrow. We're here to see Clara Bennett, Adrian said. Room number? I can't give out guest information. Can you call her room? Tell her Adrian and the girls are here? The clerk hesitated, then picked up the phone. Ms. Bennett? There's a family here to see you. A pause. She says no visitors. Tell her we're not leaving, Ellie announced loudly. Tell her we'll wait all night if we have to, Ava added. The clerk relayed this information, listened, then hung up. She's coming down. You can wait over there. They sat on a worn couch that had seen better decades. Ellie swung her legs, nervous energy radiating off her. Ava just stared at the elevator, willing it to open. When Clara finally appeared, she looked exhausted. Her eyes were red, hair pulled back in a messy bun, wearing sweatpants and an old t-shirt. She saw the girls and her expression crumpled before she got it under control. You shouldn't have brought them, she said to Adrian. They insisted. Clara! Ellie jumped up and ran to her. Ava followed, both girls wrapping themselves around Clara's legs. We miss you, Ellie said into Clara's shirt. Please come home. Clara knelt down to their level, smoothing their hair with shaking hands. I miss you too, so much. Then why won't you come back? Ava asked. Because sometimes things don't work out the way we want them to, even when we wish they would. That's not a real answer, Ellie said. That's what grown-ups say when they don't want to explain. Clara laughed wetly. You're right. I'm sorry. She took a breath. The truth is your dad and I had a disagreement about some important things. And sometimes when people disagree about important things, they need space from each other. But you don't need space from us, right? Ava's voice trembled. Never. I could never need space from you two. Then just come home and ignore Dad, Ellie suggested. We have 12 bedrooms. You don't even have to see him. Clara pulled them both close, and Adrian watched her shoulders shake with silent crying. It doesn't work like that, sweetheart. I can't live in your dad's house if things aren't okay between us. Why aren't things okay? Ava pulled back to look at Clara seriously. Did he say something mean? Because Dad's not good with words sometimes. He says the wrong thing when he's scared. Clara's eyes flicked to Adrian, then back to the girls. He didn't say anything mean. He was actually trying to do what he thought was right. But it made you leave. It made me realize we wanted different things. What different things? Ellie demanded. You both want us to be happy. You both like coffee in the morning. You both read boring books. What's so different? Adrian stepped forward. I wanted to give Clara space to figure out her life without feeling pressured. Clara wanted us to figure it out together. So you were being stupid, Ellie concluded. Ellie, Clara started. No, she's right, Adrian said. I was being stupid. I was scared that Clara was only with us because she didn't have other options. And instead of talking about it like an actual adult, I decided I knew what was best for her. Clara stood slowly, the twins still clinging to her hands. This isn't a conversation to have in a hotel lobby. Then let's go somewhere else. Your room, my car, the parking lot. I don't care, but the girls are right. We need to actually talk instead of running away from each other. Clara looked at the twins, then at Adrian, then at the front desk clerk who was very obviously eavesdropping. There's a coffee shop next door. It's probably closed, but they have tables outside. They walked over in silence, the twins between Clara and Adrian like a buffer. The coffee shop was indeed closed, but the outdoor seating area was lit by street lamps. They sat at a metal table that wobbled slightly. Girls, Clara said gently, can you give me and your dad a few minutes alone? No, both twins said simultaneously. We want to hear this, Ava added, so you can't say one thing to us and something different to each other. Clara looked at Adrian helplessly. He shrugged. Okay, then you should know that your dad thinks I might only love him because he gave me a job and a place to live when I needed it. That's dumb, Ellie said immediately. Ellie, Adrian warned. It is, though. Clara loved us before she moved in, when she still lived in her old apartment and took the bus here every day. Remember? Adrian did remember. Clara showing up in the same worn clothes, refusing raises, bringing homemade lunches because she couldn't afford to buy them, loving his daughters when she had no reason to except that she genuinely cared. Your dad's worried that once I have money of my own and don't need his help, I might realize I don't actually want to be here, Clara explained quietly. But that's not true, right? Ava looked between them. You said you loved us. I do love you. I love you both more than I know how to say. What about Dad? Clara's eyes met Adrian's across the table. I love your dad too, even when he's being an idiot. Then what's the problem? Ellie asked, exasperated. The problem is loving someone doesn't always fix everything else that's broken, Clara said. Your dad and I come from really different worlds. His family hurt my family badly. We have history that's complicated and painful, and sometimes that history is bigger than feelings. Mom used to say feelings are what make us human, Ava said quietly. And if we ignore them, we become robots. Adrian felt his throat tighten. Emma had said that, usually when he was too buried in work to notice his family falling apart around him. Your mom was smart, Clara said. She was, and she'd tell Dad he's being dumb right now. Ava turned to her father. Do you love Clara? Yes? Does Clara make you happy? Yes? Does she make us happy? Obviously. Then why are you making it complicated? Ava spread her hands like the answer was obvious. Just say you're sorry and ask her to come home. It's not that simple, baby. Why not? You made a mistake. You apologize. Clara decides if she forgives you. That's how it works. Out of the mouths of 7-year-olds. Adrian looked at Clara, who was biting her lip to keep from smiling. She's not wrong, Clara said. I know. Adrian took a breath. I'm sorry. I'm sorry for making decisions about what you need without asking you. I'm sorry for letting my father's doubts become my doubts. I'm sorry for being too scared to fight for this. Okay, Clara said quietly. Okay. Okay. I hear your apology. I'm still angry at you, but I hear it. That's fair. Is this the part where you kiss? Ellie asked hopefully. No, both adults said together. This is the part where we figure out if we can actually make this work, Clara continued. Because your dad was right about one thing. We do have complicated history, and I do need to figure out who I am separate from being your babysitter or your dad's girlfriend or James Bennett's daughter. So you're not coming home, Ava said, deflating. Not right away. I need some time to think, to figure out what I want that isn't tangled up in needing security or running from the past. How much time? Ellie asked. I don't know yet. The twins looked devastated. Adrian felt the same way but tried to hide it. Can we still see you? Ava asked. Even if you're not living with us? Clara smiled through fresh tears. Of course, if your dad's okay with that. I'm okay with that, Adrian said immediately. More than okay. Then maybe we can have dinner sometimes. Or I can come see your garden. Or we can go get ice cream. Like divorced parents, Ellie said. We're not divorced. We were never married, Clara pointed out. You know what I mean. Split custody, but nobody's actually splitting up. Clara laughed despite herself. Something like that. They sat there for a while longer, working out logistics. Clara would keep her phone on for the girls. They could call whenever they wanted. She'd come by the house when she could, though she and Adrian would keep some distance while they figured things out. It wasn't the resolution Adrian had hoped for, but it was more than he'd had when they arrived. Walking back to the car, Ellie grabbed his hand. You have to fix this for real, she said seriously. Not just apologize. Actually fix it. I'm trying. Try harder. Clara's the best thing that happened to us since Mom died. If you let her go because you're scared, I'll never forgive you. Adrian looked down at his 7-year-old daughter delivering relationship advice and felt simultaneously proud and ashamed. Noted. The next few weeks were strange. The twins talked to Clara every night before bed. She came by twice to check on the garden, staying just long enough to help them water and weed before leaving again. She was friendly but distant with Adrian, polite in a way that hurt worse than anger. The settlement negotiations progressed. Clara's lawyer kept pushing her to take more money, but she remained firm about the foundation idea. She wanted most of it to go toward helping people who couldn't afford to fight corporate injustice. It's what my father would have wanted, she told Adrian during one of her brief visits. They were standing in the garden while the twins chased fireflies across the lawn. He spent his last months trying to fight something he couldn't afford to fight. Maybe this way, other people won't have to go through that. It's a good legacy. It's the only one I can give him now. They watched the twins in comfortable silence. This was better than nothing, Adrian told himself, but it still felt like they were both holding their breath, waiting for something neither of them could name. I got an apartment, Clara said suddenly. In the city. Close enough that I can see the girls easily, but far enough that I have my own space. That's good. I'm glad. Are you? Adrian turned to look at her. I want you to have what you need, even if what you need is distance from me. What if I don't know what I need? Then I'll wait while you figure it out. Clara's eyes searched his face. For how long? As long as it takes. That's not fair to you. Let me decide what's fair to me. She smiled sadly. That's what I said to you, about letting me decide what's best for me. I know. I'm learning. One of the twins shrieked with laughter, having caught a firefly in her cupped hands. The other ran over to see, and they both examined the blinking light with serious concentration before letting it go. They're happy, Clara observed. They miss you. I miss them too, and this, all of it. She gestured at the garden, the house, the evening settling into night. I got so used to this being my life that I forgot it wasn't really mine. It could be. Could it? Or would I always be the woman who needed saving, the poor girl who got lucky? You didn't get lucky. You survived hell and came out the other side still able to care about people. That's not luck. That's strength. Clara wiped her eyes. I should go. I told the girls 30 minutes, and it's been 40. Clara, wait. Adrian caught her hand. I'm not good at this. At being patient or waiting or any of it, but I'm trying, so take whatever time you need. I'll be here. She squeezed his hand once, then let go and walked over to say goodbye to the twins. Adrian watched her hug them both, watched her walk to her car, watched her drive away, and wondered how long he could keep his heart suspended like this before something broke. Richard showed up the following Sunday, bringing bagels and opinions. You look terrible, he observed, setting food on the kitchen counter. Thanks. The girls say Clara hasn't been around much. She's figuring things out. For how long? As long as she needs. Richard studied his son. You're really going to wait? No ultimatums, no demands for clarity? What else would I do? Push her into a decision before she's ready? That worked great last time. Fair point. Richard sat down heavily. I owe you an apology. And her one. Though I doubt she wants to hear it from me. For what? For planting doubts. For suggesting she was using you. For making you question something that was actually good. Richard looked older than Adrian had ever seen him. I was protecting you from the wrong thing. Should have been protecting you from becoming like me. What do you mean? I mean, I've spent 40 years choosing safety over risk, logic over feeling, and I built a very successful, very lonely life. Richard picked at his bagel. There was someone once, before your mother. I loved her deeply, but she came from the wrong family, wrong background. My father advised against it, said it would complicate business relationships. What happened? I listened to him. Married your mother instead, a perfectly suitable match that made everyone happy except me. And her, eventually. Richard's smile was bitter. Your mother knew she was my second choice. We were civil, comfortable, but never really in love. When she passed, I felt sadness, but not devastation. And that might be the saddest part of all. Adrian had never heard his father talk about his marriage this way. Did you ever see her again? The first woman? Once at a charity event years later. She'd married someone else, had children, looked genuinely happy. I sometimes wonder if I could have had that. Real happiness instead of comfortable contentment. Is there a point to this story? The point is, don't be like me. If you love Clara, really love her, then fight for it. Don't let fear or logic or other people's opinions talk you out of something real. I'm trying, but she needs space and I'm giving it to her. Good, that's good. Richard stood. But when she's ready, when she comes back, don't waste time being practical. Tell her everything. Risk looking foolish. Be vulnerable. All the things I never learned to do. After his father left, Adrian sat with those words. He'd spent weeks trying to be patient, trying to respect Clara's need for space, but maybe patience wasn't the same as passivity. Maybe giving her space didn't mean disappearing completely. He pulled out his phone and started typing. Over the next week, Adrian sent Clara one text each evening, not demanding responses or asking for updates, just small observations about the girls, about life, about things he thought she'd want to know. Ellie's tomato plant is growing faster than Ava's. There may be twin rivalry brewing over vegetables. Found one of your hair ties in the living room. The girls fought over who got to keep it. Ava won by virtue of finding it first. The house is too quiet. I never thought I'd miss the sound of someone making pancakes at 6 a.m. Clara didn't respond to most of them, but she didn't block his number either, which Adrian took as a positive sign. 2 weeks into this new routine, his phone rang late at night. Clara. Hey, he answered, trying not to sound too eager. Hi. Sorry for calling so late. It's fine. Everything okay? Yeah, She paused. I got the final settlement offer today. $10 million plus recovered assets from Marcus's accounts. It's real now. How do you feel? Terrified. Relieved. Angry that my parents didn't live to see it. Guilty that I'm getting money they should have had. Claire's voice wavered. I've been broke for so long that I don't know how to not be broke anymore. It'll take time to adjust. The lawyer says I can set up the foundation, but keep enough for myself to be comfortable. To never have to worry about rent or food or whether I can afford to fix my car. That sounds smart. It sounds like something my father would want me to do. Take care of myself first, then help others. She was quiet for a moment. Adrian, can I ask you something? Anything. Did you mean it? About waiting? Yes. Even though I've been gone for weeks and might need more time? Even then. Why? Adrian chose his words carefully. Because you're worth waiting for. Because what we have, is rare. Because my daughters ask about you every day and they're not wrong to miss you. Because I miss you too. Clara's breath hitched. I miss you too. I miss the girls. I miss that ridiculous house and the garden and hearing Ellie and Ava argue about everything. I miss feeling like I belonged somewhere. You do belong here, do I? Or am I just nostalgic for something that was always temporary? Only one way to find out. What's that? Come back. Try again. See if it still works. What if it doesn't? What if we crash and burn and hurt the girls in the process? What if we don't? What if we actually figure it out and build something good? Clara laughed shakily. When did you become the optimistic one? When I realized being realistic was just another word for being scared. I'm still scared. So am I. We can be scared together. There was a long pause. Then, I signed a year lease on the apartment. Adrian's heart sank. Oh. But I've been thinking. The girls' school is closer to your place than mine, and I do miss the garden. And maybe we could try the whole together thing again. Slower this time, with actual conversations instead of assumptions. Are you saying you want to move back in? I'm saying I want to try. Really try. Not as your employee or someone you're helping, as your partner. Equal footing. I'd like that. Even though I come with baggage and trust issues and a tendency to run when things get hard. Even though I come with a dead wife I'll always love. 2 daughters who deserve better than my terrible communication skills and enough emotional unavailability to fill the mansion. Clara laughed for real this time. We're such a mess. Completely. But maybe that's okay. When did we decide being a mess was acceptable? Right around the time we stopped pretending to have everything figured out. They talked for another hour. About the foundation Clara wanted to build. About how to tell the girls she was coming back. About ground rules and boundaries and honest communication. About trying to build something real instead of something convenient. When they finally hung up, Adrian sat in his office and allowed himself to hope. Clara came back on a Saturday. The twins were at a birthday party, giving them time to talk without small audience members offering commentary. She stood in the foyer with 2 suitcases and that worn canvas bag, looking nervous. "Hi," she said. "Hi." "This is awkward." "Extremely," Clara laughed. "Should we establish some ground rules?" "Probably." They sat in the living room where they'd first met, where Clara had crawled into a blanket fort and changed everything. "I want to contribute," Clara said. "Rent, groceries, utilities. I know you don't need it, but I need to not feel like a dependent." "Okay." "And I want us to actually talk about things, problems, fears, when we're upset. No more assuming we know what the other person needs." "Agreed. And the girls. We need to be careful with them, not let them get too attached until we're sure this is sustainable." Adrian looked at her. I think that ship sailed months ago. I know, but we can try to be mindful. Make sure they understand we're still figuring things out. They'll understand. They're weirdly perceptive about this stuff. Clara twisted her hands together. I'm really scared I'm going to mess this up. Join the club. We meet weekly to discuss our collective inability to function in relationships. Is there wine at these meetings? So much wine. She smiled, some of the tension easing. I do love you, you know. It's not gratitude or desperation or financial need, it's just you and the girls and the life we started building before I ran away from it. I love you too, even when you're running, even when I'm being an idiot, even when everything's complicated. Everything's always going to be complicated. Then I guess we better get used to it. Clara crossed the space between them and kissed him. It was tentative at first, then deeper, both of them pouring weeks of missing each other into it. The girls will be home in an hour, Clara murmured against his mouth. Then we have an hour. That's very practical of you. I'm trying this new thing where I don't overthink everything. How's that working out? Terribly, but I'm committed to it anyway. They spent that hour relearning each other, talking and kissing and simply existing in the same space without the weight of uncertainty pressing down. When they heard the car in the driveway, they reluctantly separated. Ready for this? Adrian asked. Not even a little bit. The front door burst open and 2 7-year-olds exploded into the house, high on birthday cake and excitement. They stopped dead when they saw Clara. You're here, Ava said carefully, like she was afraid Clara might disappear if she said it too loud. I'm here, Clara confirmed. For how long? Ellie asked. For as long as you'll have me. Both girls looked at their father. Really? Really? They shrieked and launched themselves at Clara, who caught them both and held on tight. Adrian watched his daughters, who'd been sad and quiet for weeks, light up like the sun breaking through clouds. Does this mean you're staying? Ava asked into Clara's shoulder. It means I'm going to try very hard to stay. Your dad and I are going to work at this, and it might be messy sometimes, but we're going to keep trying. Good, Ellie said firmly, because if you left again, I was going to have to get really mad at both of you. Noted, Clara laughed. That evening, they had dinner together. Clara cooked, something simple with vegetables from the garden the girls had maintained in her absence. They ate on the back patio while summer insects sang around them, and the twins narrated every single thing that had happened at the birthday party. After the girls went to bed, Adrian and Clara stood in the garden looking at the plants that had grown despite everything. Your father would be proud of you, Adrian said. The foundation, clearing his name, refusing to let bitterness destroy you. I hope so. I spent a lot of years angry at the world. It's exhausting. What changed? Clara thought about it. I realized being angry kept me connected to the worst parts of my past, and I wanted to be connected to something better, something future-focused instead of stuck. The foundation will help a lot of people. I hope so. But honestly, even if it only helps one family avoid what mine went through, it'll be worth it. They stood there in comfortable silence, both processing how far they'd come from that first meeting in this very garden. Thank you, Clara said quietly. For what? For not giving up, for being patient when I needed space, for letting me figure things out without pressure. Thank you for coming back, for giving us another chance, for loving my daughters even when I was being impossible. They're easy to love. So are you. Clara leaned into him and Adrian wrapped his arms around her. Above them, stars were coming out, pinpricks of light in the gathering dark. Inside the house, 2 little girls slept peacefully. And for the first time in years, Adrian felt like his life was moving toward something instead of away from everything he'd lost. 6 months later, Richard Hayes stood at a podium announcing the creation of the James Bennett Justice Foundation. Clara stood beside him, professional in a way that would have seemed impossible a year ago. The foundation had offices downtown, a staff of 12, and a mission to provide legal support to individuals facing wrongful termination and corporate injustice. My family made a terrible mistake, Richard said to the assembled press. We failed James Bennett and his family. We cannot undo that harm, but we can honor his memory by ensuring others have the resources to fight for truth when powerful entities would prefer they stay silent. Clara spoke next, her voice steady despite the cameras and microphones. My father was a good man who was destroyed by lies. He died believing the world thought he was a criminal. This foundation exists so that other families don't have to endure what mine did. So that truth has a fighting chance against power. Afterward, reporters tried to ask about her relationship with Adrian, about living in the Hayes mansion, about whether this was all some elaborate PR move. Clara handled each question with grace, refusing to let them derail the foundation's purpose. Adrian watched from the side of the room, proud of how far she'd come. The woman who'd shown up with a worn canvas bag full of crayons had transformed into someone who commanded respect in boardrooms and press conferences. But she was still the same person who made pancakes with his daughters and got dirt under her fingernails in the garden. That evening, back at the house, Clara found him in his office. "You're staring at paperwork without reading it," she observed. "Thinking. About? About how different life is now compared to a year ago." Clara sat on the edge of his desk. "Better or worse?" "Immeasurably better. Messier, more complicated, but better." "The girls are asleep. We should probably talk about something." Adrian set down the papers he hadn't been reading. "That sounds ominous." "Not ominous, just important." Clara took a breath. "I've been thinking about the future, about what we're building here." "Okay." "And I realized I'm not scared anymore. Not of this, not of us, not of staying." "That's good, right?" "It's very good, but it also means I'm ready for the next step." Adrian's heart started beating faster. "What step?" Clara slid off the desk and knelt down, pulling a small box from her pocket. Adrian's brain short-circuited. "What are you doing?" he asked, his voice coming out strangled. "Something terrifying." Clara opened the box, revealing a simple silver band. "Adrian Hayes, you're emotionally unavailable, terrible at communication, and you use money to solve problems instead of dealing with feelings." "Is this supposed to be romantic?" "I'm not finished. You're also kind, patient with your daughters, even when you're drowning, and you believed me when nobody else did. You gave me a chance when I had nothing. You fought for my father's name when you didn't have to, and you let me run away and then welcomed me back without making me grovel." "You did grovel a little bit." "Shut up. I'm proposing." Clara's hands were shaking. "I love you. I love your daughters. I love the life we're building, and I want to keep building it, legally, officially, with rings and vows and the whole terrifying commitment." Adrian stared at her. "You're asking me to marry you?" "Yes. Is that okay?" "I know traditionally the man asks, but I've never been very traditional, and I wanted you to know that I'm choosing this, choosing you, not because I need security or a home, but because I want you in my life forever." Adrian dropped to his knees in front of her, pulling his own small box from his jacket pocket. Clara's eyes went wide. "What?" "I was going to ask you this weekend. Had this whole thing planned with the girls and rose petals and probably way too much sentimentality. You have a ring?" "I've had a ring for 3 months. I was waiting for the right moment." "I ruined your proposal." "You made it better." Adrian opened his box, showing a delicate ring with a single stone. "Clara Bennett, you're stubborn. You run from things that scare you, and you have terrible taste in apartments." "Hey, but you're also the strongest person I know. You survived things that would have destroyed most people. You love my daughters like they're your own. You make me want to be better, braver, more honest, and I want to spend the rest of my life trying to deserve you." They knelt facing each other on the office floor, both holding rings, both crying. "So is that a yes?" Clara asked. "That's a yes." "Is yours?" "Definitely a yes." They both laughed, slightly hysterical, and simultaneously put rings on each other's fingers. Then they were kissing, tangled together on the floor of Adrian's office, just like they'd been that first night they'd admitted their feelings. "The girls are going to lose their minds," Clara said, when they finally pulled apart. "Should we wake them up and tell them? At 10 p.m. on a school night? Absolutely not. We'll tell them in the morning." Practical. Someone has to be. They stayed on that floor for a while, holding each other and processing that they'd both somehow had the same idea at the same time. "We're going to have to plan a wedding," Clara said eventually. "We could elope. Your father would murder us both, and the girls would never forgive us." "Fair points. Big wedding it is. Not too big, just family and close friends. So like 200 people." "Adrian." "I'm kidding, mostly." Morning came with twin tornadoes bursting into their room at dawn. Adrian and Clara were still asleep, Clara's head on Adrian's chest, their hands intertwined and showing matching rings. "Are those rings?" Ava asked loudly. Both adults jolted awake. "What time is it?" Adrian mumbled. "Ring time," Ellie announced. "Why do you both have rings? Did you get married without us?" "No," Clara said, sitting up and trying to get her brain to function. "We got engaged." Both girls froze. Then they started screaming. "You're getting married?" Ellie was jumping on the bed. "Like officially? Like Clara's going to be our actual mom?" Ava added. Clara's eyes filled with tears. "If that's okay with you." The twins launched themselves at her in a tackle hug that nearly knocked her over. Adrian caught them all, creating a pile of tangled limbs and happy crying. "This is the best day ever," Ellie declared into the chaos. "We haven't even had breakfast yet," Adrian pointed out. "Still the best day." They spent the morning calling people. Richard, who somehow didn't sound surprised. Clara's lawyer, who was delighted. Friends and colleagues who offered congratulations and, in some cases, disbelief that Adrian Hayes was getting remarried. The wedding planning took months. The girls insisted on being flower girls. Richard insisted on paying for everything, which Clara initially fought before realizing it was his way of welcoming her officially into the family. The foundation kept Clara busy, but she made time for cake tastings and venue tours and all the small decisions that went into creating one perfect day. They got married in the garden behind the mansion, the same garden where they'd planted vegetables together, where the twins had learned about growth and patience, where Clara and Adrian had stood that night and talked about building something better. Clara wore simple white with flowers in her hair. Adrian cried when she walked down the aisle. The twins cried because their father was crying. Richard cried because his son had found something he himself had been too scared to reach for all those years ago. The vows were personal, written by the couple themselves. Adrian promised to communicate better, to not make assumptions, to fight for them instead of retreating. Clara promised to stay instead of running, to trust instead of doubting, to believe in the possibility of happiness. And when they kissed, when the officiant announced them married, when their daughters cheered and threw flower petals, it felt like the beginning of something rather than the end of a long journey. At the reception, Richard gave a toast. "I've made many mistakes in my life," he said. "But my biggest mistake was believing that love was something to be managed rather than embraced, that feelings should be controlled instead of honored. My son is wiser than I was. And Clara," he looked at her directly, "you've given my family something we didn't deserve, a second chance, grace we hadn't earned. You could have hated us, should have hated us. Instead, you loved us enough to stay. Thank you." Clara wiped her eyes, and Adrian squeezed her hand under the table. Later, as they danced under lights strung between trees, Clara rested her head on Adrian's shoulder. "I never thought I'd have this," she said quietly. "A wedding, a family, a future that felt secure. I never thought I'd want it again. After Emma, I was convinced that chapter of my life was over. Are you glad you were wrong?" Immeasurably. They swayed to music while around them people laughed and celebrated. The twins were running wild with other children, high on cake and attention. Richard was talking to Clara's former lawyer about the foundation. Everything felt right in a way Adrian had stopped believing was possible. "I love you," Clara said. "I love you too. Even when I'm difficult?" "Especially then." "Good. Because I'm going to be very difficult when we start planning the honeymoon. I have opinions about beaches versus mountains. We can go to both." "That's a terrible plan. Very unfocused." "I'm working on it." Clara laughed and kissed him, right there in the middle of the dance floor, with everyone watching. And Adrian kissed back, not caring who saw, not worrying about appearances or propriety or anything except this moment with this woman who'd changed everything. Years later, when people asked how they met, Clara would tell the story about a babysitting ad in a coffee shop, about a billionaire widower and his sad daughters, about gardens and investigations and running away before finding the courage to come back. She'd tell them about Marcus Vance going to prison, about the foundation that helped hundreds of families fight corporate injustice, about two little girls who grew up knowing their family had been broken but chose to heal anyway. But mostly, she'd tell them about learning that love wasn't about being perfect. It was about being honest, about choosing someone every day even when it was hard, about building something together instead of trying to do everything alone. And if anyone asked whether she regretted those 6 years of struggling, of barely surviving, of losing everything before finding her way back, Clara would shake her head. Because those years had taught her what mattered. They'd stripped away everything superficial and left only the core of who she was. And when Adrian Hayes had looked at that core, damaged and scared and fiercely protective, he'd seen something worth loving. Not because she was easy, not because she was convenient, but because she was real. And sometimes the realest things are the ones most worth fighting for. The mansion that had once felt like a museum became a home. Not perfect, not always peaceful, but alive with the sound of children growing and parents learning and love that refused to stay quiet. Clara planted new flowers every spring. The twins grew up knowing their mother's story and their stepmother's story and understanding that families could be built as well as born. Adrian learned to leave work at the office, to communicate instead of assuming, to fight for what mattered instead of protecting himself from being hurt. And on quiet evenings, when the girls were asleep and the house was still, Adrian and Clara would stand in that garden and remember where they'd started. Two broken people who'd found each other at exactly the right time. Not because everything was perfect, but because they'd both finally learned that perfect wasn't the point. Living was the point. Loving was the point. Trying and failing and getting back up and trying again, that was the point. And they'd built something beautiful from the wreckage. Not despite the pain, but because of it. Because pain had taught them what mattered, had shown them what they could survive, had proven they were stronger together than they'd ever been alone. And that, Clara would say years later to her stepdaughters as they prepared for their own futures, was the only lesson that really mattered. Love wasn't about finding someone perfect. It was about finding someone worth the mess, worth the fear, worth the risk, and then choosing them every single day, even when it was hard, especially when it was hard, because that's what made it real.